Important update about YouTube playlists. Hey everyone. We've received many messages asking why our YouTube playlists aren't showing up. Do we create YouTube playlists? Yes, we absolutely do. So why can't you see them? Honestly, we're not sure. We've been in contact with YouTube support for several months now, but we still haven't received a clear answer or solution. After much discussion, our team has decided to take matters into our own hands. We believe the issue might be related to the number of playlists we've created on a single channel, possibly too many. Our solution? We're launching 2 additional YouTube channels, giving us a total of 3. This way, we can organize our audiobooks better and avoid the playlist visibility issue in the future. This change only affects our YouTube audience. If you're a patron supporter, you can still access all our audiobooks by visiting the collection menu on Patreon. Thanks so much for your time and continued support. Happy listening. Chapter 2838, Shovel Transport Team. So, the reason they hadn't seen any burrowing sand locusts in the desert earlier was that the mutant summoned creatures had already eliminated them. And even Wayne couldn't help but glance toward the depths of the forest. From the very beginning, he had found it strange why Mr. Fang had transported so many combat shovels into the forest. Now that he had seen Mr. Fang's summoned creatures, he finally understood. Mr. Fang was using his summoned creatures to mine spirit crystal ore. That explained why they needed so many combat shovels and how they had managed to earn so many contribution points. Just as Wayne was marveling at Fang Hang's special ability, a group of players escorting another batch of combat shovels arrived at the forest. The supply of combat shovels was still coming in continuously. It seemed that they still didn't have enough. So, just how many summoned creatures did Mr. Fang have? Wayne swallowed hard. He had a premonition. The number of Mr. Fang's summoned creatures must have been terrifyingly high. Of course, this was still just his speculation. How could he confirm it? Got it. Wayne took a deep breath, thinking carefully, and opened his surveying instrument for a closer look. If his guess was correct. Indeed. Seeing the energy fluctuation readings on the surveying instrument, Wayne raised an eyebrow. The intensity of the ore response fluctuations within the entire mining area had decreased significantly. So, from the moment the mining area was discovered, in less than half a day, more than 1/10 of the mining had already been completed. And judging by the trend, the mining speed was still increasing rapidly. The more Wayne thought about it, the more shocked he felt. At this rate, the entire mining area might be completely excavated before tomorrow? Just then, a subordinate rushed over, interrupting Wayne's thoughts. "Boss Wayne. Something's wrong over there." Wayne looked up at his subordinate and asked, "What is it?" "It's the infected worms. We've found infected worms. Take me there." Hearing this, Wayne's heart skipped a beat. He immediately stopped sorting the ore and followed his subordinate to check the situation. At the outskirts of the forest, near the supply route for the combat shovels, a commotion had broken out among the player team. A group of people had gathered in a circle. In the center, one player stood with a pale face. On the ground, a puddle of foul-smelling green slime remained. The moment Wayne saw the sticky substance, his expression changed drastically. "Damn it. Infected mutant worms. Quick. Go get Mr. Fang." Before anyone could run off to inform him, Zaka and Sugwantong saw the commotion outside and hurried over to check the situation. "What happened?" "It's an ancient infected worm," Wayne questioned the player. "When were you infected?" "I don't know." The infected player, terrified out of his wits, calmed down and shook his head repeatedly. "I swear, I've been with everyone this whole time. I never went near any infected worms." Seeing how tense everyone looked, Zaka found it odd and asked, "What exactly is an infected worm?" Wayne took a deep breath and explained, "You two just entered the game not long ago, so you might not fully understand how terrifying infected worms are. You can roughly think of them as an ancient mutant worm species in this game world. A while ago, we were on a mission with the Federation team. While exploring some underground ruins, we discovered a cluster of ancient hibernating worm eggs. Once the eggs hatched, they released tiny mutant worms that could infect humans. As these larvae developed, they released massive amounts of pheromones, which in turn attracted hordes of mutant creatures." Wayne said, "This place is very dangerous. Soon, a large number of mutant worm creatures will gather at the pheromone location. We still have some time, but we need to immediately report to Mr. Fang to execute an evacuation." Zaka exchanged glances with Sugwantong. "Evacuate? That's serious?" Wayne didn't seem to be lying. But something felt off. Infected worms weren't exactly common. And now they just happened to appear here? Sugwantong asked, "Where is the infected worm now?" "We killed it as soon as we found it, but it was too late. The pheromones have already leaked. This area has been locked onto by the mutant swarm, and they're already on their way." Mr. Fang is busy handling an urgent matter and told us not to disturb him. Zaka glanced at the others before pausing briefly and continuing, I don't think this little issue is worth bothering Mr. Fang over. If a swarm does arrive, we can ask for his opinion then. The other players' expressions changed instantly. They had seen how terrifying the swarms could be. Stay here? Wasn't that just waiting for death? Wayne grew anxious and turned to Arkley. Arkley, say something. You were there, too. The mutant swarm isn't as easy to deal with as they think. Well. Arkley thought for a moment. Mutant swarms were indeed frightening. It should be noted that the Federation ship is being attacked repeatedly by mutant worms, not only due to the invaders but also because of the residual pheromones left aboard the ship. The Federation has scrubbed and cleaned the ship hundreds of times in an attempt to remove the pheromone traces, but despite their efforts, a small amount remains, causing a continuous influx of mutant worms to assault the ship. But, compared to the old ancestor, these mutant swarms were nothing. It shouldn't be a problem. Arkley shook his head and said firmly, until Mr. Fang gives new orders, please continue with the ore sorting work. Huh? Wayne was completely stunned after hearing Arkley's words. What kind of medicine did Mr. Fang give Arkley that made him fearless, to the point of not even fearing death? Alright. Zaka turned to Wayne and said, since you're so worried, why don't you join me and form a small team to check out the desert perimeter? If we encounter trouble, we can always come back and show respect to Mr. Fang. But, Wayne thought to himself, if they actually encountered a mutant worm swarm, would they be able to come back in time to warn everyone? Is it too late by then? Alright. Let's head out immediately. Wayne didn't have time to think further. Having the chance to react was better than staying here and waiting to die. He quickly nodded in agreement. Zaka and Sugwantong exchanged a glance, and swiftly picked a team of 7, setting off on their energy crystal hoverboards towards the desert's edge. 10 minutes later, they approached the desert's perimeter. Zaka narrowed his eyes. Beyond the desert, in the distant forest, massive swarms of black and red shadows emerged. Damn. They really came. Zaka cursed inwardly. It was the same species he had seen on the ship before, bone-eating fungal ants. A huge swarm of dark red ants clustered together, covering the ground like a thick, rolling tide, rapidly advancing toward the desert. It looked as if the land had been draped in a black and red shroud. Wayne's heart pounded wildly at the sight. He immediately suggested, the majority of the swarm is coming from the northwest. If we head back now and report, we can escape through another direction. Chapter 2839 Fighting Zaka hadn't expected the sheer number of mutant creatures to be this terrifying. Seeing them with his own eyes, he felt like an unstoppable wave was crashing down from every direction, and for the first time, uncertainty crept into his heart. Sugwantong stared intently at the swarming ants rapidly approaching from the distance and spoke in a low voice, don't panic. We've come this far, let's wait and see for a moment. Wait? Wait for what? Did they have a death wish? Wayne was speechless. He urged them anxiously, we can't wait any longer. The ants have an extremely high reproductive rate. Their numbers will explode in a short time before he could finish. Zaka's expression changed drastically. The ants that had just reached the desert's edge suddenly twisted unnaturally, their bodies splitting in half. Instant replication. 1 became 2. 2 became 4. The already dense swarm was now even more packed, ants piling onto one another, squeezing and crawling over each other. The mass of ants surged forward like an apocalyptic insect plague. Even Sugwantong's face revealed a trace of horror. The swarm. Their sheer numbers were beyond comprehension. Not far away, perched at the edge of a cliff, Joachim observed the rapidly advancing mutant swarm through his tactical binoculars. Everything was going exactly as he had planned. Now, it all depended on how Fang Heng would respond. If the swarm could eliminate them, that would be ideal. Joachim smirked, a hint of malice gleaming in his eyes. If not, he wouldn't mind taking advantage of the chaos and personally finishing the job. In no time, the ants swarmed over the entire forest, devouring everything in their path before surging toward Wayne's group in the desert. A thick layer of black and red covered the yellow sand in an instant. Wayne's heart pounded furiously. They were still not leaving? What were they waiting for? Wait. What? Wayne's brows furrowed sharply. Kai. Kai. Just as the ants closed in within 100 meters of the players, suddenly a series of brown-black figures shot out from the desert's surface. Huh? Mutant worms? Wayne's heart skipped a beat. No. Not just any mutant worms. These were Fang Heng summons. All at once, Wayne remembered Fang Heng summoned creatures had been lying in wait beneath the desert. He quickly turned to look at Zaka and the others. So that was it. They had been waiting all along to see if Fang Heng summoned creatures could hold off the ant swarm. Could they really win this fight? Wayne had no doubt about the strength of Fang Heng summoned creatures, but the sheer number of mutant worms was outright terrifying. While he was still in shock, the front lines of the mutant swarm clashed violently with the modified lickers. A one-sided slaughter. The individual strength of a bone-eating fungal ant was roughly that of an intermediate game creature. Thanks to their massive numbers and swarm tactics, they could hold their own even in an advanced game world. However, the modified lickers, enhanced by dimensional strength, had already reached the pinnacle of advanced game creatures. The moment they collided, the bone-eating fungal ants were instantly shredded by the razor-sharp claws of the lickers. The bone-eating fungal ant swarm had always been skilled at group combat, but their tactics were almost ineffective against the lickers. Their attacks, relying on team-based assault, were unable to break through the lickers' defensive layers. Even the weak damage that managed to penetrate the defense quickly healed under the lickers' undead properties. Endless numbers of brown stealth form lickers emerged from the ground, rushing towards the bone-eating fungal ants. In the blink of an eye, the licker swarm formed an interception net across the desert. Within moments, the lickers had formed an interception barrier across the sand. Any bone-eating fungal ant that got too close to the interception net would be completely torn apart. Wayne swallowed hard, a cold sweat breaking out on his forehead. He was utterly stunned by what he was witnessing. They actually stopped the swarm? The battle had only lasted a few moments, yet the ground was already littered with a thick layer of ant corpses. Just who had they been messing with all this time? On a distant mountain peak, Joachim observed the battlefield through his binoculars, his expression darkening in disbelief. What the hell? There were other mutant creatures in the desert? Due to the licker's stealth modifications and their spiked outer layer, combined with the unique mechanics of this game world, most players had automatically assumed they were some new, undiscovered mutant species. But what baffled Joachim even more was that the mutant creatures were fighting each other. What was going on? Why weren't the desert mutants responding to the ant swarm's pheromones? The desert mutants held an absolute advantage in battle, mercilessly slaughtering the ants. Even though waves upon waves of ants continued to arrive in seemingly endless numbers, the interception line held firm. No matter how many came, they all died. Su Guantong watched the ever-growing pile of ant corpses, unable to hide the shock in her eyes. Fang Heng. His in-game strength was nothing short of terrifying. No wonder he was able to become the world lord of two worlds in such a short time. Zaka was also shocked by the scene before him. He had expected that with Mr. Fang's summoned creatures guarding, they could at least intercept the ant swarm for a while. But he didn't expect Mr. Fang's summoned creatures to be so numerous and terrifyingly strong, capable of blocking such a large-scale mutant worm ant swarm. Zaka took a deep breath, hiding the shock in his eyes. Despite his panic just a moment ago, he had now regained his composure. He patted Wayne on the shoulder and gave him a look that said, "I knew it would be like this. How about it? Are you reassured now? We can go back to work." Wayne turned his head, looked at Zaka and the others, and suppressed the shock in his eyes. "I admit, I was short-sighted. I truly give up. Alright, no need to say more. Let's go back and get to work. Mr. Fang knows what he's doing." Bang. On the ship, Zoran slammed his fist onto the table, filled with rage. Joachim. The news of the bone-eating fungal ant swarm attacking the desert region was immediately received by the Federation, and it quickly reached Zoran's ears. No need to think. Such underhanded tactics definitely came from Joachim. Joachim had become increasingly audacious. He was determined to teach him a lesson. Zoran quickly calmed down, a cold glint in his eyes, and asked, "How's Fang Heng's situation?" "The situation is not bad." Zoran was a bit surprised. He turned back and asked, "Not bad?" The attack of the bone-eating fungal ant swarm was so fierce that even the entire ship could barely withstand it. How could Fang Heng's situation still be fine? The bone-eating fungal ant swarm's attack was blocked by an unknown creature in the desert region. Unknown creature? Yes, we're not sure what kind of creature it is yet, but it has occupied the desert region and is temporarily stopping the bone-eating fungal ant swarm from advancing further. Zoran immediately showed an unusual expression. The mutant worms were fighting each other? What was going on? Was it because of Fang Heng? Could it be that he could control the mutant worm swarm to some extent? Chapter 2840 Disappearing. There's one more thing I need to report, sir. Go ahead. We compared the current energy field in the psychic mining area with that from 5 hours ago, and we found that the energy field intensity has dropped by 1/3. Zoran's expression changed slightly. Impossible. From the energy reaction of the ore in the mining area, its reserves were far greater than any previously mined. Even if the entire mining area consisted of high-concentration crystals, which are very easy to mine, the energy reaction should not have dropped so drastically in such a short amount of time. The biggest question was, how did they manage the transportation? The energy fluctuations did not disappear for no reason. Zoran said in a low voice, continue observing. Yes. Understood. From dusk to dawn. An entire night passed. The bone-eating fungal ants continued to launch relentless attacks on the desert. The liquor groups relentlessly slaughtered. The corpses piled up in rows on the desert became obstacles for the advancing ant groups. After being devoured by the rear ants, the corpses continued to be used as fuel for further attacks. The terrifying mutant worms. A whole night of fearless charging. The desert mutant worms were equally terrifying, slaughtering frantically throughout the entire night. Wayne and his subordinate team tirelessly sorted the ore throughout the night. They were exhausted to the point of collapse. Finally, when the sun rose again, the ore sorting work was temporarily completed. The sorting work is temporarily finished. Thank you all. You can rest now until Mr. Fang issues new instructions. The players raised their heads to look at Harkley, who spoke, their faces somewhat dazed. Huh? It's over? Great. Finally, a chance to rest. After sorting continuously through the afternoon and night, the players were mentally numb. Wayne, physically and mentally exhausted, stood up with the help of his subordinates from a small stool, regretting it in his heart. Why had he angered Fang Heng for no reason? Wayne's lips curled in bitterness as he glanced at the scanning device. His eyes suddenly showed a look of astonishment. The energy reactions in the entire mining area had dropped significantly. What was going on? The energy reactions had dropped to less than 1/10 of the initial amount. In just one night, the mining area had actually been completely mined out? They had only done the sorting work, the rest digging, collecting, transporting, transferring, refining, etc. Had Mr. Fang taken care of all of it? Wayne couldn't help but look toward the center of the forest, his eyes filled with shock. There were too many things he couldn't understand. At the edge of the desert, on a cliff, Joachim and a few subordinates had spent the entire night waiting, enduring the cold wind. One of the mercenary group's trusted men once again lowered his head to check the data on the scanning device. With concern in his heart, he couldn't help but whisper, "Boss, we..." Joachim raised his hand to interrupt, saying, "Don't you find this interesting?" I admit, Fang Heng is very capable. He can control the mutant worms in the desert through some method we haven't figured out yet. He can even mine the ores quickly and has used some method to cover up the fluctuations in the ore." Joachim coldly gazed at the distant center of the desert and continued, "But all of this is in vain. The bone-eating fungal ants seem to be blocked by the desert mutant worms, but did you notice? Right now, the entire desert region is completely locked down by the bone-eating fungal ants. I'm really curious how they plan to escape from so many ant groups." One of his subordinates looked toward the distant desert. At the desert's edge, piles of mutant worm corpses had accumulated, causing even more ant groups to be blocked behind. Now, the entire desert was tightly surrounded by the bone-eating fungal ants. Not a single person could escape, let alone transport any materials out. The subordinate immediately said, "Boss, you're brilliant." Meanwhile, deep within the iron mine, Fang Heng clenched the spirit gemstones in his hand, one by one slowly cracking and turning to dust. Ding! The player's zombie clone, transformed body, kills the bone-eating fungal ant. Player gains battlefield contribution points plus 82, ding. The player gains master-level psychic experience points 2990, ding. The player's zombie clone, transformed body, kills bone-eating fungal ant, ding. The player's current master-level psychic skill level rises to maximum level. Fang Heng opened his eyes again. Done. Absorbing psychic energy involves the sea of consciousness and cannot be done through the zombie clone. It requires personal absorption. Fortunately, the absorption efficiency of the S-level spirit gemstones is very high. After one night, he had absorbed enough. Fang Heng got up and checked the game hints. Huh? Why did his battlefield contribution points suddenly increase so much? It was only then that Fang Heng noticed a large number of kill notifications on his retina. What was going on with these bone-eating fungal ants? How did he gain so many contribution points out of nowhere? It seemed like this started happening after his retreat yesterday, with contributions constantly piling up. That was good news. He had been quite far from getting the Grand Master level advancement book. Even after a whole night of liquor kills, he had gained over 100 million contribution points. Free stuff, why not take it? However, the entire mining area had already been emptied, and there were not many spirit gemstones left for cultivation. Even if he converted all of them into contribution points, it wouldn't be enough to buy the Grandmaster level psychic advancement book. He would have to find another place to mine. Thinking about this, Fang Heng stood up, leaped out from the center of the mining area, and called for everyone to gather to discuss the next course of action. Mr. Fang. Although he hadn't gone offline the entire day yesterday, Zaka was an old player, and overseeing the work was easier than sorting ores, so he was still in good condition. When everyone had gathered, Zaka quickly reported on the mining area's situation. We've successfully completed the mining and refining process, but we encountered some trouble during the process. Is it related to the bone-eating fungal ants? Yes, yesterday we found infected worms in the forest. Zaka quickly recounted the encounter with the bone-eating fungal ants outside the desert and continued, now, all our external routes are blocked, and a large number of combat shovels can't be delivered. Feng Heng listened thoughtfully, stroking his chin. Infected worms. Pheromones. Good stuff. Wasn't this the perfect tool for monster farming? Before he went into seclusion for cultivation, he had issued a command for the liquor groups to protect the advancement zones around the desert's edges, which led to the current situation of being seemingly surrounded. Given the strength of the liquors, dealing with the bone-eating fungal ants was no problem at all. If he could gather more pheromones, wouldn't that speed up the monster farming? But there was no need to rush. For now, he would focus on gathering elite energy to max out his psychic skills. Su Guantong said, Feng Heng, we suspect someone is secretly targeting us, intentionally injecting pheromones into Wayne's subordinates to cause the mutant worm creatures to attack the mining area. Chapter 2841 Target. Do you know who it is? Wayne thought for a moment and said, when we excavated the ancient infected worms, most of the mercenary groups were involved. It's likely that someone from that group secretly collected the infected worm eggs, but who exactly did it is still unclear. That. Wu Zhao shrank his neck, raised his hand, and said softly, I heard that after Cole resurrected offline, he recruited quite a few people to deal with Mr. Feng. Could it be other people who accepted commissions from him? Wayne and Arkley looked at each other. You mean Joachim? Arkley pondered for a moment and said, Joachim has always been close to Cole, so he probably accepted a commission to deal with Mr. Feng as well. Wayne nodded and said, now that you mention it, I do remember. I just asked the subordinate who was infected by the infected worm, and according to him, they had indeed come into contact with Joachim's subordinates before. TCH, that solves it, Arkley sneered. Joachim has always been ruthless. It's highly likely that it was him. Feng Heng silently noted down Joachim's name. Alright, we'll set Joachim aside for now. The mining area has been fully collected. We need to find a new one as soon as possible. Does anyone have any recommendations? It'd be best if it's not too far, and the mining area should be large enough to allow us to mine and exchange for contribution points. Wayne and the others exchanged glances, their expressions immediately becoming much more lively. Weren't they supposed to set Joachim aside for now? Why did it sound like they were still subtly targeting Joachim? Seeing the strange expressions on their faces, Feng Heng paused and asked, what's wrong? Is there an issue? No, nothing, Wayne said. Among the known mining areas detected on the survey equipment, most of them are occupied by Joachim. Oh? Joachim has occupied so many mining areas? Cole forcibly took control of many mining areas found by smaller teams using his background, and those small teams had no power, so they just accepted it. Later, Cole's team had limited mining capabilities, so they sold those areas at a low price to Joachim. I see. But Joachim's mining efficiency is slow. Feng Heng opened the survey map and nodded. Then we'll lend a hand and help them out first. Huh? Wu Zhao was startled and asked, what's the problem? Mr. Feng, well, if we forcibly seize it. Wu Zhao said carefully, the Western District Federation doesn't allow mercenary groups to engage in large-scale conflicts. Cole only took control of small teams' mining areas due to his distant cousin's influence, but I heard he's been warned by Captain Zoran many times. If we directly attack Joachim's territory, the Federation will likely react, especially with Cole backing him up. It could put us in a very disadvantageous position. I see what you're saying. Feng Heng nodded lightly, a faint smile on his face. So, when we make our move, we need to be careful, leaving room to maneuver, making sure the Federation can't pin this on us, right? Huh? Wu Zhao opened his mouth, thinking, that's not quite what I meant. The others exchanged glances, still unsure about Feng Heng's intentions. Wayne said, Mr. Feng, we also observed that the area outside the desert has been completely blocked off by the mutant worm creatures. Not only are the combat shovels unable to bring supplies in, but it seems very difficult for us to leave the desert now. Wayne and the others felt uneasy. From their perspective, Feng Heng summons could only operate within the desert region. Now that large swarms of mutant worms had surrounded the outer area of the desert, they might be trapped in the forest and unable to leave. Feng Heng looked up and asked, are the material supplies still sufficient? We don't have many people, and we've all brought enough rations and energy bars. We should be able to last a week. That's good. Feng Heng snapped his fingers and said, prepare yourselves. We leave in 2 hours. 2 hours later. Wayne and his group followed Feng Heng to an underground cave entrance at the edge of the forest. A cave? Wu Zhao and the others exchanged puzzled glances. Wait, weren't they supposed to leave the desert? Why did Mr. Fang bring them here to a cave? Zaka was equally confused. When did this cave appear? They had thoroughly searched the forest before to find the entrance to the iron mine but hadn't found any cave entrances. Let's go, Fang Heng said as he stepped into the pitch-black cave, raising his hand in front of him. Immediately, several dark golden orbs floated up from his hand and hovered around the group, illuminating the cave. Since the liquor had gained an additional stealth skill, it could now move quickly underground and dig tunnels at a much faster rate. The efficiency was incredibly high. The players were suspicious as they followed Fang Heng into the cave. The cave was clearly newly excavated, and the newly placed wooden planks used to stabilize it were still visible. As the inclined passage led downwards, they slowly moved deeper into the earth. The deeper they went, the more unsettling it felt. This passage was too new. Could it have been recently dug? Finally, they reached a flatter area, and the surroundings became more open. Almost there. Fang Heng stopped and took an energy crystal hoverboard from his backpack. The others exchanged glances, then pulled out their hoverboards and followed Fang Heng as they sped forward through the tunnel. Wayne's heart skipped a beat as he glanced down at the survey instrument. They were quickly leaving the desert. Fang Heng had actually dug an underground tunnel to escape the desert region. And based on the direction, it was a direct path to the next mining area. The mutant worm swarms were concentrated in the upper desert layers, but they were bypassing it from below, directly attacking Joachim's mining area. A full-on raid. Wayne looked ahead at Fang Heng's back, still filled with uncertainty. A tunnel this quickly dug out? Was it thanks to the mutant worm summons abilities? So, Fang Heng's summons weren't limited to the desert region, as they had initially thought? Wayne sighed silently in his heart, already mourning for Joachim. Joachim was probably done for this time. Joachim's largest occupied mining camp. Over 50 mercenary players were responsible for guarding, collecting, and transporting in the area. Since it was a large camp, it was often harassed by the mutant worm creatures, which significantly slowed the mining efficiency. Inside the iron mine, the players responsible for mining were working together to extract spirit crystal ores. Suddenly, the player captain in charge of the camp felt something was off. What was that? He felt a slight tremor under his feet. Did the mine collapse? He carefully looked toward a nearby player, and to his surprise, he saw a slight bulge appearing near the player's feet. Chapter 2842 Snatching the ore Alto, what's that by our feet? Huh? The player, puzzled, looked down at his feet. Kai. Suddenly, the surface of the ground exploded, and a dark brown shadow shot up from below, leaping straight toward him. Bang! Alto's protective suit shattered instantly, and the massive impact sent both him and the liquor flying backward. What the hell? The surrounding players heard the explosive sound and turned around in alarm, their expressions changing dramatically. Careful. It's a mutant worm. Where did it come from? Without much time to think, the players immediately raised their energy beam weapons, aiming at the flying liquor and firing in unison. Whoosh! 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 The liquor, still in midair, was pierced by a barrage of energy beams. Bang! The liquor crashed to the ground heavily. Kai. What? The players gathered around in shock, noticing that the mutant worm creature, which had been pierced by hundreds of energy beams, was still not dead. The liquor struggled on the ground, and its wounds rapidly healed. What kind of monster was this? Its self-healing ability was terrifying. They had never seen anything like this. Whoosh! After recovering, the liquor lunged at the nearest player again. Stop it. At the same time, dozens of beam weapons continuously fired at the liquor, blasting it backward once more. It was still not dead? After hitting the ground, the liquor began to struggle madly once again. The captain in charge of the mine squad broke out in a cold sweat. The players were at a loss for what to do, but suddenly, they felt another faint tremor beneath their feet. They looked down again. The ground beneath them was cracking open. Could it be? A chilling premonition started to rise in the players' minds. Bang! 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 In the next moment, the ground cracked open even further, and numerous black-brown mutant worm bodies shot up from the earth, charging straight toward the player group. Bang! 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 When the liquor swarm attacked from underground, players found that once a liquor got close and made even a single attack, the energy shield provided by their tactical suits would instantly shatter, sending both the liquor and the player flying backward. The player leader was also sent flying as his shield shattered under the liquor's attack. When he struggled to his feet and looked up in the blink of an eye, the entire iron mine domain was swarming with black-brown mutant worm creatures. More and more mutant worms were bursting out of the ground. Retreat! The squad leader didn't hesitate, shouting as he turned and ran. These terrifying mutant worms. There was no way to survive against them. In an instant, the players in the cave scrambled to escape. Kai. The mutant worms cleared the entire mine, and the liquor swarm quickly spread out of the cave, sweeping through the mining area before using their stealth skill to bury themselves back underground. Everything returned to silence. It wasn't until over 10 minutes later that a crack appeared in the ground at the center of the mine. Several liquors emerged from the crack, expanding the entrance before backing away. In a moment, Fang Hang leaped out from the passage. "Hey, we've arrived." Fang Hang looked around the mine. The positioning device provided by the spawn tribe was quite useful, allowing them to accurately locate the ore deposits, saving them time searching. Wayne and his group followed closely behind, climbing out of the tunnel. Seeing the bloodstains and traces of battle around the mine, the group quickly deduced what had happened. "Looks like the passage is sorted." Fang Hang nodded in satisfaction and turned to Wayne, saying, "The summoned creatures will finish extracting the ore and transport it back to the forest through the passage below. When that happens, I'll need you all to help with sorting." "Huh? More?" Wayne's scalp tingled when he heard sorting. "Alright, fine. Good." Fang Hang, multitasking, controlled a group of lickers to lay an ambush while also sending zombie clones to begin mining. He nodded and said, "Almost done. Let's go check the next one." On the cliffs outside the desert, Joachim had been watching the two mutant worm swarms. Even though they had been fighting for an entire night, neither side showed any signs of stopping. Suddenly, Joachim let out a disdainful laugh. His confidant couldn't help but ask, "Boss, what's so funny?" The mutant worms are indeed strong individually, but unfortunately, their activity is limited to the desert region. The threat they pose is relatively small. Fang Hang. Why did he not come out yet? Well, no matter. Let's see how long they can hold out. Just as Joachim was thinking, a player hurriedly approached and whispered something in his ear. "What?" Joachim's expression immediately darkened. "What happened, boss?" his confidant asked. The mining area was attacked by mutant worms. His confidant felt a sinking sensation and stayed silent. Recently, they had occupied several mining areas and had been steadily extracting ores. They had encountered a few sporadic mutant worm attacks, but nothing major. Joachim slowly turned his head toward the desert, his voice cold. "The mutant worm creatures that launched the attack are the same as those in the desert." His confidant instinctively glanced back at the desert, fear appearing in his eyes. If these creatures attacked their mining area, could that end well? Joachim gritted his teeth. Something's wrong. Very wrong. Joachim felt a strong premonition that things were not as simple as they seemed. Was this directed at him? Before Joachim could sort out his thoughts, another player hurried over and reported, "Boss, there's another problem. The Varan mining area was also attacked by mutant worms." "What? 2 mining areas under attack? And both the largest ones?" Was this directed at him? Joachim grabbed his subordinate by the arm, asking, "What about the others? Have the other mining areas been attacked by mutant worms?" "We're not sure yet." "Go check. Find out." Joachim released his subordinate and turned to look toward the desert, a deep sense of weariness in his eyes. He had a strong feeling. The mutant worm swarm was coming for him. No more waiting. "Take me back." Joachim didn't want to waste any more time and immediately followed his subordinate back to the mining area. An hour later, Joachim rushed to the mining area. From a distance, he noticed a group of players gathered outside the mining area, looking like they had just been through a fierce battle. The situation seemed grim. "Boss." When they saw Joachim return, the subordinates stood up in unison. "What happened?" "The mutant worm creatures suddenly burst out from the mine, attacking us. The mutant worms were too strong, and with our abilities, there was no way to fight back. We had to retreat, and we only barely escaped with our lives." Chapter 2843 Hostile. Where are the mutant worm creatures? Are they still in the mine? "They're still in the mining area. We just tried entering the periphery, but we were attacked by the mutant worm swarm as soon as we got close." Joachim turned his head toward the mining area, his brows furrowed as he prepared to lead his team closer for a look. "Boss." A trusted player gently tapped Joachim's shoulder and whispered, "Look, the energy reaction of the mining area's resources is abnormal." Joachim lowered his gaze to the mapping device in his subordinate's hand, his expression immediately shifting to one of concern. What the hell? The energy readings were rapidly depleting. What was going on? Joachim quickly raised his head and stared at the mining area once again, his mind racing. What's happening over there? Where's the ore? Why was the energy consumption so fast? Had the mutant worm swarm been devouring it? Report. 2 more squad members rushed over one after another, hastily delivering their report. Joachim's voice grew cold as he barked, "Speak." "Boss, the A29 mining area was attacked by mutant worm creatures. We couldn't defend against them." "Enough. Don't say any more. Joachim's eyes blazed with fury. It's only his mining areas being repeatedly attacked by the mutant worm swarms. Who else but Feng Heng? But even if he knows who the enemy is now, what can he do? Against the overwhelming strength of the mutant worms, he has no way to fight back. Federation ship. Captain Zoran had just received information about the mutant worm swarm, and he was immediately taken aback. The mutant worms had somehow appeared out of nowhere and attacked Joachim's large mining areas. Other mining areas seemed to be unaffected, but why was Joachim's being targeted? Zoran had been prepared to teach Joachim a lesson and give him a hard time, but upon hearing this news, he decided to hold off for the moment. Was it Feng Heng behind this? Interesting. It looks like Joachim has run into something far beyond his expectations this time. Let him learn a proper lesson. While Zoran was contemplating, several beams of light from spatial transmissions flickered inside the ship. Joachim stormed in, accompanied by several subordinates, and approached Zoran. Joachim? What's the matter? Captain, Feng Heng is controlling the mutant worms to invade my mining areas, damaging our ores. Isn't the Federation going to intervene? Joachim, Zoran said coldly, fixing him with an intense gaze, the spirit crystal mines do not belong to any of you exclusively, understood? Joachim clenched his fists and stared back without fear. So you're saying the Federation is allowing us to fight over the mining areas? Fight over? As I understand it, your mining area is being attacked by mutant worms. Zoran gave Joachim a frosty look and asked, you say Feng Heng is controlling the mutant worm swarm to occupy your mining area? Do you have evidence to prove it? Joachim was at a loss for words. Everyone knew Feng Heng was behind the scenes causing this trouble. But evidence? What evidence did he have? As he watched his once successful mining areas being eaten up one after another by the mutant worm creatures, Joachim felt powerless. His fists clenched tightly, his nails digging into his skin. Taking a deep breath, Joachim spoke again. Captain, my mining area is in danger. I request the Federation to send reinforcements to help me deal with the mutant worm swarm attacking the area. Humphrey. Joachim. Do you even know what you're asking? Do you really think the Federation will deploy forces just for you? Get real. The Federation is not here just for you. Captain Zoran had long been displeased with Joachim's actions in the game, not to mention that Joachim's moves against Feng Heng had already crossed his bottom line. Did he really think a simple apology would be enough to make Zoran step in? What a joke. Zoran had no problem giving Joachim a harsh lesson. Joachim took a deep breath, his eyes cold as he stared at Zoran. Captain, are you unwilling to help me? Zoran sensed the threat in Joachim's voice, and it made him even angrier. He replied coldly, I didn't say that. The issue of your mining area being attacked by the mutant worms will be discussed. You'll receive a response afterward. Captain Zoran, I hope you won't regret your decision today. Are you threatening me? Is there any? Since the Federation is openly siding with Feng Heng, there's no point in me staying here. Goodbye. Hey. Zoran's anger flared as he watched Joachim use the transition passage to leave. Just a mercenary. And he dared to threaten him? Ridiculous. It's best if someone like him leaves his ship. On the other side, Joachim stormed out of the ship with his subordinates, still filled with rage. Boss, just leaving like this? What else should we do? Can you deal with those mutant worm creatures? The subordinate fell silent. Humphrey. Joachim snorted coldly. I admit defeat this time, but before we leave, let's teach them a lesson. Boss, what are you planning to do? Joachim raised his head and cast a cold glance at the ship. If I can't have it, neither can they. Central Desert Zone. After a few underground passages were opened and after more than 4 hours of waiting, ore materials started to be delivered again. Wayne, along with his subordinates and players, worked in shifts to sort them. A full day and night passed. Wayne and Wu Zhao, along with a group of players, were mentally exhausted. Why did they even provoke Feng Heng in the first place? Sorting ores non-stop felt worse than being in prison. Meanwhile, Feng Heng was sitting in the center of the iron mine, remotely controlling his zombie clone to search for new mining areas. Joachim's large mining areas had been depleted. His master-level psychic skill had also been maxed out. At the current rate, factoring in the time needed to exchange for the Grandmaster-level skill book, max out the Grandmaster-level skill experience points, and set aside some contribution for unlocking after logging out. There were still plenty of things that required spending contribution points. At this pace, it would take another 3 to 4 days of grinding. Would the mutant worms and art in this world be enough for him to farm? Or should he summon all his zombie clones deployed in the Death Realm and focus all his strength on mining? As Feng Heng was pondering, a game hint suddenly appeared on his retina. Ding! The Federation starship's overall damage has exceeded 30%. The ship is under attack by the mutant worm swarm. You have triggered an emergency mission. Rescue the starship. Mission name, rescue the starship. Mission description, the starship has been continuously attacked by a large number of mutant worms, and the damage has exceeded 30%. If the ship is destroyed, you will be unable to continue. Please be careful. Mission requirements, support the starship, additional contribution points will be rewarded for completing this mission. Fang Heng's pupils constricted suddenly. Not good. The ship. This game world's entry method was through the starship. It was like the unique teleportation method of the spawn. If he kept grinding happily here but the starship got destroyed and couldn't send the ores out to exchange for contribution points, wouldn't that be a waste? What's worse, he might even be trapped in the game? Fang Heng quickly stood up and jumped out from the mine. Chapter 2844. An emergency. Zaka and his group also received the game prompt and were currently gathering outside the mine pit. Boss Fang, the ship is under attack. What should we do? Gather everyone. We're heading back to the ship in 10 minutes for a rescue mission. Got it. I'll inform the others right away. Wayne and the other players were finally relieved upon hearing the news. They quickly equipped themselves and gathered, following Fang Heng into a new underground cave. Buzz. Fang Heng led the way into the cave passage, releasing an energy orb that illuminated the entire underground passage. Wayne and his group fell into a brief silence as they watched the dark passage stretch forward. So, they were going back to the ship. Had Boss Fang already dug the way back to the ship in advance? Before they could figure it out, several lickers, dragging wooden boxes with pulleys, swiftly passed by them, racing down the passage and disappearing into the darkness ahead. Let's go. Follow me. Without further thought, everyone took out their energy crystal hoverboards and quickly followed Fang Heng down the passage. Over half an hour later, Wayne realized that the passage ahead was gradually sloping upwards. We're here. Fang Heng was the first to stop his hoverboard and signaled for everyone to stop. Wayne looked ahead, and the passage ahead was pitch black. Upon closer inspection, he saw a dense cluster of gray-brown mutant worms gathered ahead. Wayne nervously swallowed. So many. Everyone, we're close to the bottom of the ship. We're going to break through and exit upward soon. It could be dangerous, so be ready for combat, Fang Heng said, waving his hand in front of him. Kai. 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 The licker swarm, gathered in the darkness, immediately began to climb up the walls around them, preparing to break through. After a period of chaos, the situation in the ship's domain began to gradually settle down. Zoran's frustration boiled over. Unable to vent his anger, he slammed his hand onto the operations panel. Bang. Can someone tell me what's going on? Why did such a massive incident occur in the experimental area? Who assured me that it was 100% safe? In the face of Zoran's fury, everyone shrank back, too afraid to speak. A personal guard entered the control room. Seeing the tense atmosphere, he stood frozen for a moment, unsure whether to advance or retreat. Speak. What's happening? Captain, the radar has detected large numbers of mutant worms moving toward the ship's domain. The first wave of creatures has already engaged with the ship's perimeter, and the energy of the defensive barrier is rapidly depleting. At this rate, I'm afraid. The guard hesitated, glanced at Zoran, and continued, the ship's mainframe has assessed the probability of total destruction as extremely high and suggests we evacuate this world. Evacuate? What a joke. The spirit gemstone mining area was extremely rare. After withdrawing, where could one have found a mining area? Not to mention that after the initial landing of the ship, the deployment of the Spirit Clan's transition passage had already taken place. At this point, the remaining ship's energy was no longer sufficient for it to transition again in search of a new world. Zoran asked, have you reported this to the superiors? We've already informed the superior department. The first wave of reinforcements has joined the battlefield, and additional teams will continue to arrive. However, our energy is too low to provide effective weapon support, which is severely impacting our combat capabilities. Report. Another soldier rushed into the command hall with an urgent message. An emergency report from the Western District Federation's military department. The Federation's investigation committee has already been notified of the mutant worm breach. The inspection department has assigned an inspector to oversee the situation and assess the crisis. They are expected to arrive in 10 minutes. Additionally, the Langsing ship was about to transition and rush to provide reinforcement, and it was estimated to arrive through transition within 3 hours. The commander ordered that by then, the Langsing ship would take the crystalline bugs and leave first. The inspection department. The investigation committee. Zoran's brow furrowed deeply. Multiple factions within the Western District Federation had been keeping each other in check. This time, the Star Map project was under the full control of the military department, causing dissatisfaction among many factions. Now that the Langsing ship was facing a catastrophic crisis, It was only natural for the investigation committee to seize the opportunity and intervene under the pretense of an inquiry. But this situation felt off. Why was the Federation's investigation committee moving so quickly? It was as if they had been prepared in advance. Cole. Zoran immediately thought of Chloe's cousin, Minister Zachary. Chloe had always been involved with Joachim. This whole situation was likely leaked from Joachim's side. Joachim, you better hope I don't find out that you're behind this. Zoran muttered to himself, narrowing his eyes as he quickly regained his composure. No matter what, military orders must be followed. The military mission had been issued, so he had no choice but to comply. At least, until the reinforcements arrived, the ship could not afford to fail. All-out adjustment of weapon output, hold the ship's domain position, and completely lock down the research institute area. Understood. Zoran quickly issued the orders, watching the external battle conditions through the monitoring screen. Federation soldiers on the ship were taking cover behind the defensive barrier, continuously firing at the densely gathered mutant worms outside the perimeter. The situation was dire. This was only the initial wave of mutant worms, and the ship's defensive barrier energy was already dropping significantly. According to the scans, subsequent waves of worms would only get stronger. Wait. What was that? Zoran's eyes focused on the screen. An unusual bulge suddenly appeared in a sandy area beneath the ship. Then, a mutant worm creature covered in gray-brown spines erupted from the ground. Whiz. Whiz. Liquor swarms erupted from the ground, quickly attacking the surrounding mutant worm horde. The two groups collided and began attacking each other. The bone-eating fungal ants surrounding them were no match for the spiny mutant worms. It was a one-sided slaughter. Zoran's pupils contracted. That was. Suddenly, he recalled the special mutant worms mentioned in the earlier report. So it was them. Were these the mutant worms controlled by Feng Heng? Zoran had seen descriptions of these mutant worms in the report and knew that they were individually powerful and capable of infiltrating underground, launching surprise attacks from beneath the surface. They were nearly impossible to defend against. To his shock, the swarm of mutant worms was even more terrifying than he had anticipated. In a matter of moments, a black hole with a diameter of about 2 meters appeared in the sand beneath the ship. New mutant worms continuously crawled out, launching attacks against the surrounding worm horde. The soldiers, too, were seeing this strange scene for the first time and watched in awe as it unfolded on the screen. Their expressions shifted from shock to seriousness and finally to sheer astonishment. In just 5 minutes, the spiny mutant worms managed to carve out a 20-meter radius of safe zone around the hole. The spiny worms had formed a circle, blocking the bone-eating fungal ants from getting through. What kind of mutant worms were these? They had never seen anything like this before. And they could suddenly emerge from the ground like this? The soldiers, who had been frantically using energy weapons to fire from the ship, were stunned as they watched. Chapter 2845 Return to support. The mutant worms had started fighting each other. It seemed like the new swarm of ants had no interest in the ship. Then it was best to ignore them for now. The bombardment continued. The concentrated energy cannons kept firing at the bone-eating fungal ant swarm. Huh? Suddenly, a player noticed figures gradually crawling out from the pitch-black cave entrance. There were people. They were players. Inside the ship's main control room, the operators immediately adjusted the surveillance cameras to focus on the players emerging from the cave below the ship. It was Feng Heng. Along with Wayne, Wu Zhao, Arkley, and a group of mercenaries. It really was them. Zoran waved his hand and ordered, "Open the transition passage below. Bring them up, immediately." "Yes, sir." Feng Heng led the players as they crawled out from underground. Damn. The players had never seen such a terrifying and bloody battlefield before. The constant barrage of energy cannon fire roared in their ears, the pungent stench of blood filled their nostrils, and dismembered mutant worm limbs flew everywhere. Buzz. Buzz. Wu Zhao took in the surrounding battle and was secretly astonished. Mr. Feng's summoned creatures had incredible combat strength. They were actually holding the line. The players gripped their weapons tightly and stayed on alert. Moments later, beams of transition light rose from the ship above. Everyone turned their eyes to Feng Heng. "No rush, let's wait a bit," he said while giving Arkley a nod. "Understood." Arkley gestured to several of his trusted players, who immediately turned around and went back down into the pit. Inside the ship, Captain Zoran watched Feng Heng and his group's actions with a frown. "Captain, what are they waiting for? Transitioning consumes a lot of energy." "No rush, let's wait a little longer." Zoran also found it strange and signaled his subordinates to remain patient. What were they waiting for? A moment later, Arkley's players began laboriously hauling crates from the cavern floor back to the surface. The soldiers in the monitoring room were instantly filled with astonishment. Crate after crate? The operators zoomed in on the crates. Or? So they had actually dug an underground passage all the way here? And they had brought so much? The operators turned to Zoran, their eyes filled with shock. At first glance, the crates were packed with high-tier spirit gemstones. Not raw ore, but refined gemstones. How had they managed that? Zoran's eyes also reflected surprise as he stared at the screen for a long moment. So much ore. Did they possess some kind of rapid refining technique? Quickly regaining his composure, Zoran said, "What you have seen and heard must not be leaked outside." Understood? The soldiers immediately straightened and saluted Zoran. "Yes, sir." It took over 10 minutes before Arkley and his team finished transporting the S-level crates back to the ship. Only then did Fang Hang lead Zaka and the others aboard first. The interior of the ship was eerily quiet, with only a handful of Guardian soldiers present besides the lone figure of Captain Zoran standing there. Wu Zhao waved and greeted, "Captain Zoran." Zoran's gaze lingered on the crates behind Fang Hang and his group for a moment before turning to face them. He spoke in a deep voice. "You're back. And it looks like you've brought quite a lot with you. We got lucky and managed to obtain a batch of spirit gemstones. Good work." Under normal circumstances, Zoran would have been overjoyed at Fang Hang's haul. But right now, he wasn't in the mood. Wayne asked, "Captain Zoran, we heard that the ship ran into trouble, so we rushed back immediately." "That's right. The ship needs your help. You've probably received the notification already. The ship is under attack. Some parts of it have sustained damage. We've just activated the emergency barrier, but its energy consumption is extremely high and won't last for long." Hearing this, Fang Hang couldn't help but sigh inwardly. The Western District Federation was completely unreliable. He had spent all this time outside gathering a huge amount of spirit gemstones to exchange for contribution points, and now that he was back, everything was falling apart? They couldn't even protect their own base? Wayne asked, "Captain, do you have any plans? The Federation's military reinforcements will arrive gradually to help us fend off the mutant worm swarm. Additionally, a battleship is currently transitioning into our world to provide support. All we need to do now is hold out for a little longer." Hold out a little longer? Wait for another battleship to reinforce them? The more Fang Hang listened, the more unreliable the Western District Federation seemed. He had already witnessed the strength of these battleships. Would just one more really be enough to defeat the swarm? Su Guantong thought for a moment before asking, "Captain, the mutant worm swarm's attack this time seems unusual. What caused it?" "This concerns the Western District Federation's classified information. I cannot disclose it to you." Zoran glanced at Su Guantong before continuing, "Currently, there are numerous urgent special missions available inside the ship. Completing them will earn you additional battlefield contribution points from the Federation. We also need a large supply of energy crystal ore. If you can obtain some, I will negotiate with the Western District Federation to secure more contribution points for you. Time is short. Get to work. This is a great opportunity for you." As he finished speaking, a soldier hurried over and whispered something into Zoran's ear. "Excuse me." With that, Zoran quickly left with his soldiers. The group exchanged glances. Su Guantong was the first to break the silence. "Something's not right." "Huh?" Wu Zhao blinked, puzzled. "Isn't this just a case of the ship being attacked by the swarm? What's wrong with that?" Wayne checked the mission list and walked over, saying, "Did you notice? Besides us and the Federation soldiers, there aren't any other players on the ship." Wu Zhao was momentarily speechless. The ship being attacked is true, but right now, players could be using the ship's barrier to attack the swarm without taking any damage. Staying on board is the best way to earn more contribution points. So why aren't any players here? Arkley frowned and guessed, "Are they scared? Did they run away?" "I don't think it's that simple," Su Guantong said, pursing her lips. "The ship's external defensive barrier is intact, but the overall damage exceeds 30%. How did that damage occur?" Wu Zhao, still confused, instinctively asked, "How did it happen?" The group fell silent. The captain was hiding a lot from them. Which was understandable after all, they were just Federation contractors. Fang Hang walked up to the exchange screen and saw that the system was still purchasing spirit gemstones, along with Grandmaster-level psychic skills available for sale. He let out a small sigh of relief. As far as he was concerned, there was no need to overthink things. A professional contractor should know when to shut up and ask fewer questions. If the client collapsed, so be it. As long as he got his payment, that was all that mattered. With the ship on the verge of destruction, the priority was to transport the ore as quickly as possible, exchange it for contribution points, and secure a master-level psychic skill before it was too late. Chapter 2846. Inquiring. There was still a gap in the required contribution points. Coincidentally, wasn't the Federation in need of energy crystals? Then he just had to find a way to get more energy crystals. Fang Hang had already made up his mind. He walked up to a nearby federal guard and asked, "Is the Western District Federation willing to exchange contribution points for energy crystals?" "Yes," the soldier in charge of military supplies nodded and said, "We are offering to buy back energy crystals at 4 times the usual price." "That's not bad. If I transport the materials back, you'll open the ship's transition teleportation passage for me to deliver them, right?" "Of course." Feng Heng smiled slightly and nodded to himself, then checked the map surveying instrument. Wayne and his group stood behind Feng Heng, watching his actions. They exchanged glances, and their expressions became quite interesting. So, Mr. Feng didn't care at all about what kind of trouble the Federation's ship was in? He was only focused on earning contribution points? Looking at it closely, Wayne and the others couldn't help but be secretly amazed. Goodness! Even though it was an emergency, wasn't the Federation's buyback price a bit too high? 5 times the normal price. Thinking back to how Feng Heng had previously used underground tunnels to mine minerals, they knew that, in this world, energy crystal mining areas were far more abundant than spirit crystal mines. Mining energy ores was also much easier than collecting spirit crystals. It even skipped the troublesome refining process entirely. Summoned creatures only needed to finish digging the ores, and they could immediately transport them through underground tunnels straight to the ship to exchange for contribution points. What a production line! With the mining efficiency of his summoned creatures, was Feng Heng about to drain all of the Federation's contribution points? That was exactly Feng Heng's intention. It was a rare opportunity to farm contribution points. Who cared about whatever danger the ship was facing? He would just focus on his own gains. While other players were busy transporting spirit gemstones to exchange for contribution points, Feng Heng closed his eyes and immediately mobilized his zombie team to start mining the energy ores marked on the map. The others simply waited nearby. Soon, a few of Wayne's subordinates approached and whispered something into his ear. "Mr. Feng, we've confirmed the information," Wayne said. His expression shifted slightly after hearing the report. He then led Feng Heng and the others away from the Federation members and spoke in a hushed tone. "A few of my friends gathered some intel. Not long ago, there was an explosion inside the ship. The source of the explosion was in the laboratory area. The lab was severely damaged, and some people personally witnessed mutant worms escaping from the experimental zone." "Experimental zone? Mutant worms?" Feng Heng listened, looking completely baffled. Arkley and Wayne exchanged glances, their expressions turning serious. "I guess that something unexpected happened with the crystal worm found in the ruins." Feng Heng immediately became interested. "Crystal worm? Ruins?" He remembered Wayne mentioning before that the mutant worms outside the desert were influenced by the pheromones of infected worms. Those infected worms also seem to have come from the ruins. "Explain clearly what exactly is a crystal worm?" "Well, Mr. Feng, during our initial exploration of the ruins, we not only discovered a large number of hibernating infected worms but also a special crystal worm. The Federation believed that the crystal worm was a higher-level mutant worm, so they took it back to the ship for research. During their research, they accidentally triggered the release of the crystal worm's pheromones and aura fluctuations, which attracted a massive wave of mutant creatures. Fortunately, at the time, the Federation quickly put the crystal worm back into hibernation. After that, it was securely stored aboard the ship under strict supervision. We suspect that this current crisis on the ship is very likely related to the crystal worm. The worm outbreak has caused the mutant swarm to go completely berserk. The entire ship is at risk of destruction at any moment. I heard that this time, the crystal worm crisis was even more terrifying. It directly blew up nearly half of the ship. Most players, thinking the risk was too great, have already left the game world." Zaka constricted his neck upon hearing the full story. No wonder there wasn't a single mercenary to be seen on the ship. So the greatest threat had come from inside the ship all along. Captain Zoran was no saint either. He knew the ship could go down at any moment, yet he still tricked them into continuing their mission. Zaka asked, "Mr. Feng, should we evacuate as well?" Feng Heng stroked his chin. It was now certain that this world had some connection to the seed of Ouroboros. However, up until now, he had yet to see an actual cultivator or any products of the seed of Ouroboros cultivation. Nor had he sensed the presence of any other powerful enemies. Could the crystal worm be related to the seed of Ouroboros? As he was thinking, a game hint appeared. Ding! The player has triggered mission Traces of the Seed of Ouroboros. Mission name, Traces of the Seed of Ouroboros. Mission difficulty, A. Mission description, you have heard about the crystal worm discovered in the ruins. You suspect it may be related to the Seed of Ouroboros. Investigate the crystal worm. Mission objective, find the crystal worm. It had arrived. A mission. Feng Heng's pupils suddenly contracted. He turned to Wayne and asked in a low voice, "What's the current situation with the exploded sections of the ship? Is there a way to sneak in and take a look?" It's said that the Federation's military department has taken control of the situation, Wayne replied in a hushed tone. Getting in will be difficult. We just checked the entire rear section of the ship is guarded by Federal soldiers. Su Guantong chimed in, I found a maintenance-related mission in the task list for the ship's sealed-off area. If someone has repair skills, they might be able to take the task and sneak in to investigate. Oh? Fang Heng chuckled and said, what a coincidence. Maintenance? That's my specialty. Wayne was dumbfounded. Wait, what? They had spent all this time gathering intel, assessing the risks, and preparing for a potential retreat. Yet Mr. Fang looked eager to dive right in. Zaka nodded, Mr. Fang, I know a bit about maintenance too. Should I go with you? That works. Come with me. Fang Heng then turned to Arkley and the others. Or shipments will be coming in soon. You guys handle receiving them while we check out the maintenance area. Wayne was in complete shock. He knew Fang Heng was strong, but wasn't this pushing it too far? Wait. Wayne's gaze shifted between Wu Zhao, Arkley, and the others. Shouldn't someone stop him? Did they not understand the terror of the ice crystal worms? The others were one thing, but Arkley and Wu Zhao had participated in the ruins exploration. They should be well aware of how dangerous the crystal worm was. So why weren't they saying anything? Ahem. Mr. Fang. Wayne couldn't help but interject, Mr. Fang, this might not be what you think. The crystal worm has extreme corrosive properties, incredible strength, and the ability to rapidly spawn new worm bodies. It's highly dangerous, and if another explosion occurs, the consequences will be unimaginable. Chapter 2847 Crystal Worm. Thanks for the reminder. I got it. Fang Heng waved his hand dismissively, showing no concern at all. Wayne looked at Arkley and the others, expecting at least some attempt to dissuade Fang Heng. But seeing none, he was at a loss for words. Arkley glanced at Wayne and signaled for him to stay calm. The Vampire King had already taken action. What danger could possibly remain? Zaka also knew Fang Heng's true identity. Although he was a little worried, he quickly dismissed his concerns. After all, Mr. Fang could even control the game world. What was a little risk compared to that? Fang Heng casually tossed a small pouch toward Wayne. Wayne instinctively caught it, opened it, and his expression changed instantly. Good heavens! Spirit crystals. A whole pouch filled to the brim. There had to be at least 50 of them. This is... Mr. Fang? Take it. It's your payment for helping me. Whether you stay or go from here on is up to you, but remember, don't leak any information about me. Wait. All of this is for me? Wayne was momentarily stunned, but he quickly stuffed the pouch into his backpack. A notification popped up in the game interface. 100 spirit crystals. Wayne's heart pounded wildly. I swear, not a single word will come from me. Good. Fang Heng then turned to Arkley and said, the transportation task is yours. He had been in the game for so long, yet he had never earned this much even after days of hard work. Understood, Mr. Fang. Wayne watched as Fang Heng disappeared into the distance, then glanced at the 100 austere spirit crystals in his backpack. Terrifying. He had been in the game for so long, yet he had never earned this much even after days of hard work. Was the job exhausting? Exhausting? Only if the pay wasn't high enough. Should he continue? Wayne turned around and saw the eager, expectant eyes of his subordinates, all waiting for their share. Brothers, shall we trust Mr. Fang this time? Stay and make another big haul? Fang Heng and Zaka accepted the maintenance task and immediately headed to the mission location. Rear section of the ship. At the entrance, several Federation soldiers, armed with energy beam weapons, blocked their path. We've accepted a ship repair task. We're here to see Engineer Peng Li. The guards exchanged glances before stepping aside. One of them stepped forward and said, Engineer Peng Li is currently in Sector A3. I'll take you there. Follow me, and don't wander off. Thank you. Fang Heng and Zaka followed the soldier into the ship's rear section. After passing through several corridors, the soldier led them into a damaged compartment. Fang Heng immediately noticed a massive hole in the front part of the cabin. Judging by the exterior, it looked like it had been corroded away. Several engineers in white maintenance suits were using mechanical tools to conduct emergency repairs. Besides the engineers, there were even more high-tier maintenance androids working on repairs. The soldier brought Fang Heng and Zaka to a middle-aged man. Mr. Peng, these two are engineers assigned to the emergency repair task. Alright, you're dismissed. Get back to your post. Peng Li looked like a rugged man with an unkempt beard. After dismissing the soldier, he turned to Fang Heng and Zaka and asked, report your advanced precision mechanical maintenance level. Advanced, max level. Intermediate, level 7. Peng Li's eyes lit up when he heard that. He took a closer look at Fang Heng. A maxed out skill level? That was a rare talent. The ship had suffered severe damage, and Peng Li was desperately short on manpower. Especially high-level engineers who could work independently. The high-tier maintenance androids provided by the spawns were highly efficient, but they lacked independent thinking ability and were unable to repair certain high-tier precision machinery. Human supervision and control were still required. Good. I'm short on manpower. You too, follow me directly. The repair tools are over there, grab them and come with me. Feng Heng and Zaka walked to the corner of the ship's cabin, picked up the repair tools, and followed Peng Li. The ship's cabin had a large hole dissolved by corrosive mucus. Below it was a dense network of interconnected pipelines, occasionally sparking with electric arcs. Zaka couldn't help but click his tongue in amazement. His past training had only involved basic repairs. He had never encountered high-tech spaceship maintenance like this. The sheer density of circuits above was enough to make him feel like the situation was beyond saving. Peng Li looked at Feng Heng, nodded, and said, "You do it." "All right." Feng Heng lifted his mechanical maintenance gun and got to work. With max-level mechanical maintenance, max-level mechanical skills, and various high-tier mechanical repair status buffs, his efficiency was unparalleled. Stacking multiple skill buffs, combined with the enhanced concentration effect from his will attribute, resulted in an extremely high repair success rate. Peng Li immediately recognized that Feng Heng was no ordinary mechanic. One by one, the main circuit boards were restored. While the maintenance androids reinforced the structure, the ship's staff gathered to discuss the next phase of repairs. Two diagnostic engineers spread out a map on the round table and began explaining the situation. "Chief Peng, the pressure vessel has been leaking, multiple energy circuits have been cut off, and the ship's interior must have suffered massive damage. The pressure index is rising rapidly. At this rate, energy loss will only accelerate." As Feng Heng listened to the report and examined the blueprint, he quietly analyzed the situation. The exterior of the ship seemed intact, but the internal damage was severe. Energy efficiency was only at 70% of its peak capacity, with half of it being used for emergency freezing in the rear cabin. No wonder the Federation was willing to spend a fortune on energy crystals. Peng Li furrowed his brows. Given the ship's current condition, maintaining this level of functionality was already an achievement. Focus all available manpower on repairing the critical points in Sector B. We need to stabilize it first. Understood. A dozen engineers nodded in agreement and rushed towards Sector B with a team of maintenance androids. Peng Li turned to Feng Heng and asked, "What's your take on this?" Sector B is the main energy hub. Repairing critical points there will slow down energy loss, but that only addresses the symptoms. The real cause of the energy drain is the extensive damage inside the rear section of the ship. If we don't fix those critical points, the external damage will only keep spreading, and we won't be able to keep up. Peng Li smirked slightly, satisfied with Feng Heng's analysis. Of course, he was well aware of this issue. But there was no way to solve it. Ever since the crystal worms had awakened, the entire rear section of the ship had become extremely dangerous. They had just used cooling equipment to forcibly seal off the area again. The current status of the worm infestation inside was unknown. Your analysis is correct, but the rear section of the ship is a danger zone. We can't go in. Peng Li nodded. Federation ships will arrive soon to provide reinforcements. Our only job is to keep the ship running until then. Understood? Feng Heng nodded. So? What's your plan now? Feng Heng's gaze drifted across the ship's blueprint before settling on the A3821 domains, and he said, "Since we can't resolve the root cause, we'll have to reinforce various branch points, repairing major breaches while preparing for further structural damage." Chapter 2848 Repairman Good. Peng Li was quite pleased with Feng Heng's response and gave his instructions. "Now, take a batch of mechanical units to reinforce Sector A3. I need you to ensure the absolute safety of Sector A3. Can you do that?" "Yes. I'll provide you with 20 maintenance androids." Peng Li appreciated Feng Heng's straightforward attitude and, with a wave of his hand, transferred control of the maintenance androids to Feng Heng. He said, "I'll be overseeing the maintenance in Sector B. Sector A3 is in your hands. If you need anything, come find me in Sector B." Understood. Feng Heng nodded and signaled to Zaka, then led the 20 maintenance androids to Sector A3. Peng Li watched them leave and thought to himself. Normally, assigning such an important task to mercenaries would violate security protocols, but given the urgency of the situation, and since the task in Sector A3 was just reinforcement work, it should be fine. Nodding, "You're in charge of Sector A6. I'll give you 20 maintenance androids." Peng Li continued with his arrangements without further thought. "Jack, you're in charge of A12. Meanwhile, Feng Heng and Zaka followed the map and entered Sector A3. The ship's hatch closed automatically behind them. The 20 maintenance androids gathered around the two of them. Zaka looked at Feng Heng. "Mr. Feng, What's our next step? I'll go into the sealed-off area of the rear cabin to take a look. You stay outside and provide cover for me. Huh? Zaka pointed to himself. Me? Cover? Feng Heng walked over to a wall made of alloy metal on the right side of the ship and placed his hand on it, testing the surface. It didn't work. The wall had a special spatial defense, and spatial energy couldn't penetrate it. Feng Heng then tried tapping on the wall lightly. Boom. 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 The metallic wall made a brittle thudding sound. Fortunately, the wall wasn't very thick. Feng Heng took out a mechanical maintenance gun and began cutting into the metal wall. He continued to say, "No need to rush. You focus on directing the robots to carry out the reinforcement tasks. If anyone shows up, try to delay them. I'll check inside." Within 5 minutes, the metal wall was cut open, revealing a dark entrance behind it. As soon as the wall was breached, a visible aura of white frost leaked from the hole. Zaka's heart skipped a beat, and he quickly stepped back a few paces. Ah, what is this? Just normal frost. I think the Federation urgently cooled the rear area of the ship's cabin to restrict the crystal worms and force them into a hibernation mode. Feng Heng thought for a moment and said, I wonder how long this state will last. You stay outside, I'll go in and take a look. Mr. Feng, be careful. Zaka wouldn't dare follow inside, but at least he could hold his ground outside. Feng Heng squeezed through the opening, and Zaka quickly sealed the hole behind him. Inside, the passageway was plunged into complete darkness. Feng Heng activated his vampire night vision, and the surroundings became clear. He continued down the dark passage, and the air grew increasingly cold. Soon, he reached a section of metal wall that had been corroded, creating a breach. Around the edges of the breach, large patches of brown, corrosive slime remained. Looks like it's over there? Feng Heng walked toward the breach and soon entered the rear cabin area of the ship. Kai. He quickly sensed intruders. From further down the passage, several brown worm-like bodies crawled out. Feng Heng gave them a cold glance. They were small, only the size of his palm. They were likely larvae. It seemed that in the low-temperature environment, the mutant worms hadn't completely gone into hibernation mode, but their activity had been drastically reduced. Whoosh! 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 The larvae quickly scurried across the ground and lunged toward Feng Heng. Bang! 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 The larvae, midway through their charge, suddenly froze in place. The blood within the worm bodies was drawn by Feng Heng's vampiric power, causing them to be completely immobile. They struggled briefly before exploding into a burst of blood and flesh. Kai. The blood, now acidic and corrosive, leaked from the worms and dissolved the ship's metal, leaving behind black holes in the hull. Feng Heng pulled his gaze away from the decimated larvae. It seemed these mutant worms had a corrosive ability. On the outside of the ship, hordes of mutant worms surged forward. Under the concentrated fire of the ship's energy cannons, they were blasted apart into bloody chunks. The two inspectors frowned and asked, Lieutenant, why is the transition passage below the ship open? The ship is in an emergency combat state, and we are low on energy. Why is it being wasted like this? On the deck, two inspectors directly appointed by the Western District Federation had arrived to conduct on-site inspections of the battlefield. They were not accustomed to such a bloody scene and were visibly shocked. The terrifying swarm of mutant worms. Wait. What was that? One of the inspectors suddenly noticed something strange. Beneath the ship, a group of formidable mutant worms had formed a circle, continuously blocking the swarm of mutant worms coming from all directions. Such powerful combat strength. Could these be summoned creatures from the players? Upon closer inspection, the circle formed by the summoned creatures was centered around a group of players. What were they doing? The two inspectors frowned and asked, Lieutenant, why is the transition passage below the ship open? The ship is in an emergency combat state, and we are low on energy. Why is it being wasted like this? The soldier, startled by the question, immediately reported, Sir, the transition passage was authorized by Captain Zoran. The team below is a player mercenary group. They have access to energy ore, and we need to replenish our energy supply, so the energy field must be maintained. Players. Supervisor Shylock, responsible for this inspection, frowned. What nonsense is this? The ship is surrounded by so many mutant worms. Even if they find ore, can they bring it back? The soldier didn't argue but calmly replied, Please take a look for yourself. Soon, the sound of movement came from below the ship again. A group of Wayne's subordinates emerged from an opening leading to the underground passage, hauling boxes of energy crystal ore. What? There really were energy crystals. But what was this dark hole? An underground passage? The two inspectors were momentarily speechless. When did they dig this underground passage? Do you have any suggestions? Captain Zoran, who had just led a group of inspectors into the main control room for a quick check, arrived with a few soldiers and witnessed the moment the inspectors were caught off guard. He secretly felt pleased. It was quite a coincidence. Wayne's team had been preparing for a long time, and just as the first batch of energy ore was being delivered, the inspectors happened to arrive. Ahem. Shylock cleared his throat and said, "It's nothing. We just think that keeping the transition passage open continuously will waste unnecessary energy, especially when we're not missing just 1 or 2 boxes of energy ore." Ha ha ha, that's true, Zoran laughed heartily, a hint of sarcasm in his voice. "But you inspectors are used to being behind desks and don't understand the situation on the front lines. Right now, any extra energy is valuable. And it's not just 1 or 2 boxes they're bringing in." Chapter 2849 Inspection Department. Shylock had caught the sarcasm in Zoran's tone and snickered inwardly. "Is that so? What's wrong, don't you believe it?" Zoran had never liked the overseers, who were always pointing fingers and making decisions. He casually remarked, "Now that you mention it, I remember that exchanging energy from these mercenaries requires additional Federation contribution points. This contribution hasn't been reviewed yet, and since it's not much, how about your department provides it instead?" Shylock sneered inwardly and naturally didn't want to contribute any contribution points for free. He said, "All right, but we have one condition. The rear section of the ship has been in a sealed-off state, and we'd like to enter the rear cabin for a simple on-site inspection. Can the captain accommodate his request?" Zoran immediately felt a sense of amusement. He had only casually mentioned it, and the other party actually agreed? "All right, I agree to this request. As for the contribution points, I'll thank you all in advance," Zoran said. Shylock's heart sank upon hearing Zoran agree so easily. This was bad. This old dog was up to something. Before, they had repeatedly tried to inspect the ship's rear section, but Zoran had used various excuses to refuse. Now, he agreed so readily? Shylock felt uneasy and looked down at the ship's lower section. After a brief rest, Wayne and his team of players began transporting another crate of energy ore from the cavern below. Could they really have more? Wayne's team kept bringing out crate after crate, as if there was an endless supply of energy ore hidden in the underground passage. Shylock looked up at Zoran. Alright, even if he had underestimated these people, so what if they managed to get a few hundred crates of energy ore? As long as they could inspect the rear cabin, paying some contribution points would be like a toll fee. Zoran noticed Shylock's gaze and, though his expression remained neutral, he was sneering inwardly. He knew full well that Wayne's group was working for Fang Heng. With Fang Heng's abilities, he could take all of Joachim's ore and mine it by himself. It was just some energy crystal ore, nothing too impressive. Meanwhile, Fang Heng had already slowly made his way down the passage, deeper into the rear section of the ship. Along the way, small worm-like creatures emerged from deep within, rapidly climbing towards Fang Heng, but they all exploded into blood mist within 5 meters of his body. Just nice. Fang Heng hadn't known where the so-called crystal worms were, but now, these larvae were guiding him to the right location. He continued to explore and entered a warehouse in the rear section of the ship. The alloy metal door of the storehouse had been corroded, leaving a large hole. From the slime traces, it seemed like the hole had been created by an explosion, causing a jet-like spray. Fang Heng stepped forward and entered through the breach. Kai. Fang Heng squinted as he looked deeper into the ship's warehouse. Found it. In the deepest corner of the warehouse, a large flesh cocoon had formed in the upper right corner of the room. The flesh cocoon was covered in a layer of white frost, still full of vitality and metrically pulsing as though some life was growing inside. Looking closely, small larvae occasionally scurried around the outside of the cocoon. A few larvae dropped from the cocoon and swiftly crawled toward Fang Heng. Bang! As the larvae got within 5 meters of Fang Heng, they exploded into blood and flesh. Is this thing also a product of the seed of Ouroboros? Fang Heng wondered, not daring to be careless. He slowly raised his hand and aimed at the nearby flesh cocoon. Thud. Thud. The flesh cocoon began to contract rapidly, stimulated by the strength of Fang Heng's blood. Several shadows quickly emerged from the cocoon and lunged toward him. Boom. A muffled sound. The mutant worm adults slammed heavily into the holy barrier that had automatically risen in front of Fang Heng. Through the holy barrier, Fang Heng could clearly see the pincers of the worm's body. Boom. 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 The next moment, the mutant worms attached to the holy barrier exploded one after another. A highly corrosive liquid splattered onto the holy barrier, making a sizzling sound. Fang Heng focused on the flesh cocoon. Again. Whoosh. The flesh cocoon seemed to be in a breeding state, with weak resistance to external forces. Under the influence of the vampire's strength, it started to pulse even faster. Thud. 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 Ha. Interesting. Fang Heng focused on the outer layer of the flesh cocoon. As the flesh cocoon contracted faster, the frost on the outer layer peeled off layer by layer. More and more larvae and adult worms crawled out from the outside, rapidly charging toward Fang Heng. Whoosh! The mutant worm larvae and adults kept slamming into the holy barrier, exploding one after another. Consume? Fine, let's see how long you can keep this up. Fang Heng remained patient, controlling the flesh cocoon remotely through the power of his lifeblood. Under the influence of the lifeblood strength, the flesh cocoon's contraction speed rapidly increased. This. On the external ship's deck. Seeing that nearly an hour had passed, but Wayne's team of players was still moving crate after crate of ore, Shylock began to feel uneasy. Damn. There must be over 300 crates of ore by now, right? At first, Shylock thought that even if these players were skilled, they could only manage 100 crates of energy ore at most. That would only be a little contribution, nothing major. But now, just a moment later, it had turned into 300 crates? And judging by their speed, they seemed to be continuously moving crates, getting faster by the minute. Who could keep up with this? Sweat began to form on Shylock's forehead. The Federation Inspection Department's budget was large, but it couldn't handle this kind of depletion. Zoran noticed the look on Shylock's face and secretly laughed, saying, "Do you need me to send someone to ask how many more crates of ore they have left to transport?" No need. Shylock wiped the sweat from his forehead, trying to remain calm. This amount of contribution points, the inspection department can still afford it. Shylock gritted his teeth, preparing to give in. In the worst-case scenario, even if they managed to get 1,000 crates, he would just report the situation to his superiors. As long as they could obtain intelligence about the seed of Ouroboros from the ship, it wouldn't be too much of a loss. Indeed. Zoran nodded with a smile. Captain. During their conversation, a Federation soldier hurried over and whispered something into Zoran's ear. After hearing it, Zoran's expression immediately became strange. Good heavens. Fang Heng really gave him a big surprise. Shylock, keenly noticing the change in Zoran's expression, asked, "Captain, is there a problem?" "No, nothing, it's a good thing." Zoran chuckled. "A very good thing." From the very beginning, the energy ore being transported by Wayne's team was indeed ordinary. However, later on, as more and more crates arrived, all the ores transported into the ship's interior were checked and confirmed to be of the highest quality, high-tier blue crystal energy ore. Chapter 2850 Fragments. The blue crystal energy ore had a high energy content, but it was a byproduct of the associated ore, an auxiliary product when collecting energy crystals. The yield was about 4%. Fang Heng and his team had actually managed to acquire crates of blue crystal ore. This meant that they had mined dozens of times more than normal ores. Zoran suddenly had a strange feeling. It was probably because Wayne's players couldn't keep up with the delivery capacity, so they could only first send over the higher value ores that could be sold for contribution points. Zoran shook his head and dismissed the strange thought, telling himself he was overthinking. The soldier had just reported that, thanks to the energy ores delivered by Wayne's team, the ship's situation was currently excellent. It could withstand the attack from the external mutant worm swarm while consuming large amounts to maintain the internal temperature control, keeping the mutant worms at bay. In fact, the ship's remaining energy had even increased instead of decreasing. If this continued, the energy might be fully charged, and the next overall transition could take place. Unfortunately, the ship was severely damaged, and this state wouldn't allow for another transition. The military department had already issued orders, and all he needed to do was carry them out without hesitation. Shylock smiled at Zoran, but a sense of unease crept up his spine. He glanced at Wayne and his team, not wanting to stay in this place any longer. The more he stayed, the worse his mood became. "Captain, would you mind if my people went to the rear cabin to check the situation?" Zoran said, in a good mood, glancing at the time. "The Langsing ship is about to arrive. We'll soon be carrying out the mission handover. The inspection team will be a good witness. Please follow me." Shylock squinted his eyes and realized Zoran was being tricky. No wonder he readily consented to let him enter the rear cabin area. It was part of the handover, hoping the inspection department could serve as a witness. Shylock suppressed his displeasure, nodded, and said, "Fine." Back in the main control room, the ship had completed the docking with the Langsing. Soon, spatial fluctuations appeared on the ship's right side. The Langsing, a ship twice the size of their current vessel, docked on the right side. In the main control teleportation passage, a red transition passage opened. Captain Taylor of the Langsing, along with a group of Federation soldiers, entered the ship's interior through the teleportation passage. "Captain Zoran, thank you for your hard work." Zoran first focused his gaze on Captain Taylor, then quickly scanned the people behind him. Joachim. It was him pulling the strings behind the scenes. Seeing Joachim in the crowd, Zoran's anger flared. Joachim, noticing Zoran's gaze, gave him a provoking smile. Captain Taylor, Zoran suppressed his anger and nodded. We have received the commander's orders, and we'll fully cooperate with you in transferring the crystal worms. Yes, with the enemy close by, I won't waste time. Let's get started as soon as possible. This is Shylock from the Federation investigation team. He's been ordered to accompany us and document everything for future investigations. Taylor gave Shylock a fast glance, his brows furrowing slightly. The inspection team has quite the inside information. Captain, you jest. It's our duty. We received an anonymous tip and will accompany you throughout. Don't worry, we won't interfere, Shylock replied. Hope so. In the ship's rear warehouse, a large number of mutant worm larvae, under the influence of blood energy, spilled out of their flesh cocoons and rushed toward Fang Heng. Bang. 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 The larvae slammed into the holy barrier Fang Heng had raised in front of him, exploding on impact. It was ineffective. After more than half an hour of consumption, the strength of the flesh cocoons had been greatly depleted. The rate of the flesh cocoon's contraction had reached its limit under the control of blood energy. Fang Heng's pupils suddenly contracted. Here they came. Boom. The entire flesh cocoon expanded to its limit and burst with a loud bang. Inside the cocoon, dark green, highly corrosive slime sprayed outward upon the explosion. Kai. The slime splattered in all directions, dissolving most of the warehouse instantly. Whoosh. Amid the sizzling sound of the explosion and dissolution, a sharp noise suddenly rang out. A brown shadow shot out from the exploding green slime, quickly charging toward Fang Heng. Fang Heng stood his ground. Bang. A brown mutant worm body collided heavily with the holy shield surrounding him. The highly corrosive liquid slowly dripped down the holy shield around Fang Heng, creating black holes in the metal floor beneath him. Fang Heng assessed the mutant worm body outside the barrier. It resembled a centipede-like creature with many legs. Upon closer inspection, the creature's exterior had crystalline structures. Quite weak, Fang Heng muttered, slowly raising his hand toward the mutant worm. Bang. With the strength of blood energy, the mutant worm body instantly shattered from the center, bursting into a cloud of blood mist. Fang Heng then raised his hand. From the exploding blood mist, a brown cocoon floated toward his palm. Unlike the cocoon that had burst after killing the cultivator, this one was covered in cracks and was much smaller in size. Kai. As the cocoon approached his palm, a crack appeared in Fang Heng's right palm, swiftly absorbing the cocoon into it. Ding! The player successfully absorbed and fused the seed of Ouroboros, fragment. Ding! Due to the player absorbing and fusing the seed of Ouroboros, fragment, the player's ability related to the seed of Ouroboros is upgraded to level 4. It turned out to be just a fragment. Fang Heng glanced at the game hint, stroking his chin. He didn't see the cultivator of the seed of Ouroboros nearby, and after the kill, only the cocoon fragment remained. From this, it could be inferred that the cultivator of the seed of Ouroboros had failed in their cultivation? The mutant worm creature in the flesh cocoon was most likely a product of the seed of Ouroboros fragment's self-evolution. A failure. No wonder it was so weak. Fang Heng looked up again and scanned the warehouse, which was being corroded by green slime. It seemed that both the Western District Federation and the spawns were collecting crystal worms. If that's the case, would they have other fragments of the seed of Ouroboros? Even other fragments would be useful. After all, upgrading the seed of Ouroboros to level 4 only added 1 point to all basic attributes, but further upgrades should unlock more zombie clone mutation options. For example, the stealth ability he had just used was an excellent skill. If more seeds of Ouroboros could be found and devoured for further level ups, the zombie creatures could be further enhanced. It would undoubtedly be a huge power boost. Just as Fang Heng was contemplating this, his mind suddenly stirred. Someone was coming. Not good. If they discovered that the mutant worm had vanished, there might be trouble. Chapter 2851 Creation. Fang Heng's heart stirred. With a flick of his wrist, he swiftly threw out a piece of rune paper. Bang! The liquor burst out from the rune paper that exploded midair, swiftly crawling along the half-corroded metal surface to the position where the flesh cocoon of the crystal worm originally was. It adhered to the corner, forming a flesh cocoon and disguising itself as the cocoon before it was broken. Still missing something. Fang Heng glanced at the flesh cocoon, murmured to himself softly, and raised his hand to point at the cocoon in the ceiling corner. Hiss, hiss, hiss. The blood and flesh scattered on the ground around him slowly wriggled under the influence of the power of blood. Under Fang Heng's control, they quickly levitated and attached themselves to the flesh cocoon formed by the liquor, covering it with another layer. Done. Now, it looked almost identical to the previous flesh cocoon. Fang Heng observed his work, nodded in satisfaction, and quickly leaped towards the cavern corroded by acidic fluid on the right. He hid inside the cavern, lowered his perception, and entered a hidden state. He would observe the situation further. Ka. Soon, at the rear of the spaceship warehouse, a group of Federation soldiers in white protective suits entered. They carried white sprayers and sprayed anti-corrosion purification foam along the way, clearing a path into the warehouse. Had this place suffered another disaster? The rear area of the spaceship warehouse was built with high-strength, anti-corrosion metal materials. Even so, large holes had still been corroded through. Captain Zoran and the soldiers entered the warehouse. Seeing the severe corrosion inside, their eyes filled with solemnity. After the incident, we immediately took emergency measures, lowering the environmental temperature in an attempt to force the crystalline insects back into hibernation. Once we confirmed they had entered the cocoon state, we temporarily chose to withdraw and seal off the rear section of the warehouse. The soldiers looked up, focusing their attention on the cocoons hanging from the warehouse ceiling. Zoran scanned the surroundings and shook his head. It seems that the freezing method was not very effective. While we were away, the crystalline insects must have gone through another explosion and have now entered hibernation again. Crystalline insects. Shylock looked at the cocoons, feeling a sense of caution. These things could very well be the seed of our burrows. This trip would allow the inspection department to gather enough intelligence. Fearing that the cocoons might become active again, the Federation team players had kept their distance from the crystal worm flesh cocoon. With the dim lighting, they had not noticed anything unusual about it. Shylock asked, "Captain Zoran, do you know the cause of the incident?" "Investigating the cause of accidents is not our expertise. I can only say that we followed the standard protection procedures provided by the spawns, so there should not have been any issues. If needed, I am willing to accept an internal military investigation and oversight from the monitoring department." "Everyone," Taylor interrupted, "now is not the time for blame." Shylock chuckled and stepped back behind the others. Taylor looked up at the cocoon for a moment and continued, "Captain Zoran, directly moving the cocoon is too dangerous for us. We will proceed with the original plan, taking over the entire cabin and using spatial transmission to transfer it to the Lanxing. We will still need your help during this process." "I will do my best." Zoran's expression grew serious as he nodded and asked, "What comes next?" "The cocoon situation is unstable. The Lanxing will temporarily take over the cocoon and urgently escort it to another timeline. The military department will control the subsequent research," Taylor said, glancing at Shylock. "As for your Star River ship, the minister's decision is to temporarily abandon it." Zoran's heart sank. Abandon it, after all? Though he had suspected this outcome, hearing the news still made Zoran feel profoundly disappointed. "Captain, it's only a temporary abandonment. We won't give up on the ship," Taylor said, patting Zoran on the shoulder. "We'll assist you in cutting off the pheromone-producing areas, moving the ship's most important mainframe and various control points to a safe zone in this world. Once we're done with the current task, we'll help you rebuild the ship. Additionally, to ensure safety, we will expel unrelated personnel first." Fang Heng listened to their conversation in silence, deep in thought. Just as he had suspected, the Western District Federation had cooperations with the spawns. However, the Federation also had its own hidden agenda. At least they were still investigating the seed of our burrows. With these thoughts in mind, Fang Heng quietly stepped back from the ship's warehouse. As everyone began preparing to split the cargo hold, Zoran approached Taylor and asked, "Is there a plan for the subsequent evacuation of the Star River? The external insect swarm is extremely strong. Moving the ship later will be very difficult. Fortunately, the mutant worms don't have air capabilities. We're preparing to disassemble the critical parts of the ship and transport them via transport aircraft, setting up a temporary stronghold outside the world," Taylor explained. "Before coming here, I didn't expect the insect plague to be so overwhelming. I've received orders from my superiors to help, but we can't stay long, no more than 8 hours. Let us know if you need anything, we'll try to assist as much as possible." Teleportation. Only 8 hours. That was too short. Moving the warehouse area to the Lanxing would take 4 to 5 hours. That left them with just 4 hours, at best. Zoran suddenly thought of Fang Heng. The kids' underground passages could transport ore materials, so they should also be able to move the split parts of the ship, right? Moreover, his summoned mutant worms were powerful and could help establish safe zones afterward. Zoran pondered for a moment before looking up. "I need to urgently apply for some battlefield contribution points, and I also need help from some mercenaries." "Mercenaries?" Taylor glanced at Zoran in surprise. What could mercenaries possibly do in a battlefield like this? Meanwhile, in the ship's external control room, Fang Heng had just finished repairing the passage opening in the maintenance area. He quickly led Zaka and the others to the main control room to join Wayne and the rest. "Mr. Fang." Wayne breathed a sigh of relief when he saw Fang Heng return, giving him a slight nod. "We just received an urgent message from the military department." "How's the situation on your side?" I've been in to check, it's not a big issue, but we shouldn't stay here too long. Fang Hang paused and asked, how's the energy crystal transfer going? We're still exchanging them. There are too many. Okay, once this batch is finished, we'll exit the game directly. Wayne was surprised. What about the rest? Just wasted? Wayne didn't press further, nodding, alright, I'll take care of it. Fang Hang swiftly checked his contribution points. He was about 20% short of reaching Grandmaster level in Psychic. Having overheard the captain's conversation earlier, Fang Hang realized that the captain would expel all mercenary players, including him. Oh well. He'd figure out how to get the contribution points next time. Chapter 2852 Return. The zombie clones could stay here and continue mining the ore, saving more time for the next visit. At least the contribution points earned so far were enough for him to exchange for the unlocking method. After Fang Hang and the others had finished discussing, a Federation officer stepped forward, surveyed the group, and nodded, saying, mercenaries, due to special circumstances, your mission is temporarily on hold. Please return to the real world immediately. Western District Federation Star Map Command Post. One by one, the game cabins opened. The players walked out of the game cabins, and under the guidance of staff members, completed information registration and physical condition checks. Mr. Fang, Arkley and his group were also in the same large gaming room, and after registering their information, they walked over to Fang Hang. Zaka and his team had originally been in a group with Fang Hang, so naturally, they were with him. Arkley didn't need to think twice. He was definitely following the vampire leader. Wayne also understood. It was about hugging the powerful legs. Wayne reminded him, Mr. Fang, this is Federation territory. Cole has relatives backing him, and we might be targeted, so we need to be extra cautious. Yes, I understand. Fang Hang was also clear-headed. He wasn't going to stay here long. He would get the unlocking method and leave as soon as possible. If they were really targeted, he wouldn't be afraid. The unlocking points are already gathered, so let's complete the unlocking now. Wayne explained, unlike other exchange items, the unlocking request is more complicated and needs to be submitted to Sergeant Major Venado. Fang Hang looked up at Wayne and the others. Do any of you need to unlock something? Count the number of people and come with me. We'll go to Sergeant Major Venado together. After all, he still had a lot of contribution points. Even compared to the contribution points needed for Grandmaster level exchanges, the ones required for unlocking were just a small portion. Zaka and his team were thrilled when they heard this. It had been less than a day since they arrived at the Star Map base, and they were already able to exchange for the unlocking method. Before, they hadn't even dared to think about it. 10 minutes later, Fang Hang and his group, led by a soldier, entered Sergeant Major Venado's office. After hearing to Fang Hang's request, Venado furrowed his brow tightly. This was unexpected. They had actually gathered all the unlocking contribution points? What was going on with Zoran? Normally, Venado wouldn't mind helping them out, following the rules, but just recently, he had received some unpleasant news. Cole had just caused a scene here. It was said that Fang Hang had killed Cole in the game? A life-and-death grudge. Cole was the nephew of Minister Zachary. Minister Zachary had indeed told him to take care of Cole, but now that Cole was dead, would Minister Zachary be dissatisfied with him? Venado was troubled, and unexpectedly, Fang Hang had come asking to exchange for unlocking. If he easily conferred Fang Hang the permission, Cole's side would definitely make a scene. Would this offend Minister Zachary? In just half a minute of reviewing the information, Venado's mind had already run through many thoughts. After a moment, Venado made a decision. He would cause Fang Hang a bit of trouble. After all, the inspection department's influence was limited when it came to the military. But he still had to give face to Minister Zachary. Everyone, thank you for your contributions to the Federation's Star Map project. Your contribution points have truly reached the standard required to exchange for the unlocking method. I will register your information now. Please wait for further notice, and once it's approved, I will inform you immediately. Wait for news? How long will it take? I will just handle the simple registration here, but after that, it will be submitted for approval to my superiors. Once it is approved, we will arrange for specialized personnel to teach you the unlocking techniques, which will take some time, Venado explained. Recently, several of the officers have been busy with the Star Map project, so it might take a while, but it won't delay you for too long. Approval? What approval? This is so dragging on, Arkley said with a frown, clearly displeased. You never mentioned approval in your recruitment announcement, did you? Are you deliberately wasting our time and trying to delay us? Indeed, using contribution points to exchange for other items requires approval, but unlocking is different. Unlocking is very dangerous, and our Western District Federation is under a lot of pressure. At the very least, the military department needs to confirm that none of you are members of anti-Federation organizations, right? Bang. Arkley slammed his hand on the table and said harshly, "We don't have that much time to wait. How long will it really take?" Venado's expression gradually became colder. He said, "It's hard to say. If it's quick, it can be done in a day. If it's slow, it might take about a week." Sugwantong and the others exchanged glances. They all sensed it. The Western District Federation seemed to be stalling. Was it because of coal? Humphrey. Is the military department deliberately wasting our time? Arkley sneered. Venado shrugged and replied, "Please don't rush. You've all made great contributions to the Western District Federation. I am willing to believe in you, but the process is the process. By the way, if you're in a hurry, you can apply for an expedited process. Join us as peripheral special agents for the Star Map project, and you'll gain additional contribution points and skip the approval process." Venado shrugged and replied, "Please don't rush. You've all made great contributions to the Western District Federation. I am willing to believe in you, but the process is the process. By the way, if you're in a hurry, you can apply for an expedited process. Join us as peripheral special agents for the Star Map project, and you'll gain additional contribution points and skip the approval process." Arkley felt a headache coming on as he heard this. "Stop beating around the bush. What do you mean?" "What I mean is, if you are willing to take on an external mission, once completed, you can become special agents for the Star Map project and go through the expedited process without needing approval." "Shut up!" Arkley yelled angrily. "Expedited process? We've already gathered enough contribution points. We want the unlocking method now. Do you hear me? Sorry, but that's really not possible." Fang Heng wasn't sure if Venado was deliberately making things difficult, but he had lost patience with the drawn-out conversation. His expression turned colder as he stopped Arkley and looked at Venado. "I want to know exactly what the external mission is. It seems you have a lot of confidence in yourself." Venado smiled a little more. "I think you all have heard some rumors from the outside. The Central Federation is very dissatisfied with our Western District Federation Star Map project. Besides them, there are also many who will have a bad influence on our Star Map project. To make it simple, there is a group of people who are actively obstructing our Star Map project. However, on the surface, we can't do anything to them. So I need you to find a way to deal with them." Chapter 2853 Special Mission Humphrey. Arkley listened and thought the mission difficulty seemed manageable, snorted coldly and asked, "Can we use any method?" "Of course, it's best to completely eliminate them, but if something goes wrong, it's your personal action, and it has nothing to do with our Western District Federation." Fang Heng frowned. He understood now. This was probably the normal way to unlock the lock. Help the Western District Federation military department with some dirty work, kind of like proving loyalty. But the mission was restricted to actions in the real world. It was troublesome. Sugwantong asked in a deep voice, "Who's the target?" "The Holy Court Archbishop Wolf." Upon hearing this, the expressions of everyone changed. Well. The Western District military's target was actually the Holy Court. These people were truly mad. They dared to target the Holy Court? Archbishop Wolf has a good reputation in our Federation's Western District and has led the Holy Court in repelling Black Fog attacks multiple times to protect the people's safety. Recently, various churches have been organizing parades and protests that have greatly impacted our Star Map project. The military has investigated, and these events are linked to Archbishop Wolf. The military has been wanting to deal with this issue for a long time. Conveniently, half an hour ago, there was a Black Fog disturbance near Cordoban Province, which is a major gathering area for Holy Court believers. Archbishop Wolf has already gone there with people to eliminate the Black Fog. This seems like a good opportunity to act. Venado smiled, saying, "With the help of the Black Fog's power, we can deal with Archbishop Wolf quietly, without anyone noticing. What do you think of this suggestion?" Arkley shot Venado a glare and immediately said, "What nonsense are you talking about? Don't you know I'm a vampire? I'll probably be purified as soon as I arrive there. And, you know the Holy Court's reputation. If this leaks, we'll all end up on the Holy Court's wanted list." "Ha, don't get so worked up." Venado waved his hand and laughed. "If it was a simple mission, I wouldn't have bothered you all. Anyway, I've laid out the terms for the mission. Whether you accept it or not." "I accept." Everyone had been preparing to haggle and adjust the difficulty of the mission when they heard Fang Heng suddenly agree. They all turned to look at him. "This mission, we accept it," Fang Heng said calmly, looking at Venado, and nodded, "as long as Archbishop Wolf completely disappears, is that correct?" "Exactly. We'll leave right now." On the train, Zaken nervously swallowed and looked at Fang Heng, who was resting with his eyes closed nearby. They had came to the Western District Federation as mercenaries, and now, somehow, they were going after the Holy Court? They were going to assassinate the Holy Court's Archbishop. The risk was way too high. It sounded unreliable. If things went wrong, they would all end up on the Holy Court's blacklist. The Holy Court's strength was immense, and as the most powerful faction both inside and outside the game, their influence was terrifying. The other accompanying players also had serious expressions. Wayne occasionally glanced at Fang Heng from the corner of his eye. Fang Heng was powerful in the game, but this was outside the game. And even if he couldn't use his terrifying summoned creatures, players were still restricted by the lock in the real world. In comparison, Arkley remained calm. After all, an Archbishop of the Holy Court was nothing. With the Vampire King personally handling it, there wouldn't be any problem. The train quickly arrived at the station. Due to the spreading black fog, the entire Federation station was thoroughly sealed off by the military. Virgil, an officer from the Western District Federation, led Fang Heng and the others off the train. Virgil nodded and said, "Everyone, up ahead is the Black Fog Zone. Archbishop Wolf and his team entered the Black Fog Zone 3 hours ago to explore, and there has been no news since. In 2 hours, the Federation will send people to enter the Black Fog Zone for rescue and cleanup. Please note, entering the Black Fog Zone is your personal action, and anything that happens inside the Black Fog has nothing to do with our Western District Federation. If any issues arise, the Federation will also launch a manhunt for you. TCH." Arkley couldn't be bothered to respond, snorting disdainfully as he jumped off the platform. Fang Heng followed suit and stepped off the train. Looking up, they could already see the layer of black fog looming over the western horizon. Not many people came along on this trip, and including Zaka and his group, there were only 8 in total. Wayne carefully thought for a moment and asked, "Mr. Fang, do you have any plans?" It was the Holy Court, so having a plan was a must. "Let's not rush. I'll go in first and take a look." "Alright, Mr. Fang, take care. We'll wait for you at the entrance." "Huh? For an assassination, fewer people are more convenient. I'll go in first, check out the situation, and then we'll come up with a plan." Wayne listened and felt that this reasoning made sense. Since it was to scout the situation, acting alone would make it easier to avoid detection. "Alright, Mr. Fang, take care. We'll wait for you at the entrance." Fang Heng nodded and, under the officer's watchful eye, walked toward the black fog. Wayne watched Fang Heng leave, then turned to glance at the other companions. It was strange, besides him, it seemed like no one else was worried. Zaka wasn't worried, of course. Fang Heng? He was someone who could tear through black fog with his bare hands. The black fog here was more expansive and of a higher level than what they had encountered on the train, but to Mr. Fang, it posed no threat at all. At the black fog zone entrance, several Federation Game Department personnel stood guard. After verifying Fang Heng's military department permit, they watched him enter the black fog zone. Several groups were stationed here. This time, the black fog's level was at its highest. He actually dared to go in alone? Deep within the black fog. In the cathedral, blessed by the gods. Archbishop Wolf led his Holy Court team and briefly paused at the entrance of the stairwell leading to the 6th floor. The appearance of the black fog was highly unusual. Its central location had just happened to spawn in the Holy Court's cathedral. The cathedral was thousands of years old. Originally abandoned many years ago, it was later rebuilt into a famous memorial hall. Most of the residents around the memorial hall were staunch believers of the Holy Court. As soon as the incident occurred, Wolf had led his team to provide reinforcements. At this point, the entire cathedral had been engulfed by a layer of black fog, completely shrouding the building. The team had spent nearly 3 hours reaching the 6th floor. The earlier explorers had already confirmed that the pillar of black fog was deep within the 6th floor. However, they encountered commander-level creatures on the 6th floor. After several attempts, they realized they couldn't defeat them and were forced to retreat to the entrance of the Great Hall. "It's the binding sarcophagus," Wolf said, taking a deep breath and casting a healing spell to treat his wounds. Chapter 2854 Black Fog Zone. The creature was commander level. Moreover, it was a high-strength leader. In addition, with a large number of arcane red ravens and the Doomsday Grimoire entrenched around the binding sarcophagus, the team found it extremely difficult to handle. Participating in this operation, aside from the direct members of the Holy Court, were also 2-player squads. The 2-player squad captains swapped glances, both realizing the severity of the situation. Things were not looking good. Inside the Great Hall, they had encountered only high-tier creatures from the advanced game world, the Arcane World. The binding sarcophagus is an arcane-type creature, immune to most magical effects. Only melee and ranged physical attacks are effective. This is troublesome. Most of us specialize in magic, and few of us even have melee skills. These arcane creatures are adept at long-range spell locking, intercepting ranged physical attacks. We've already tried several times, and getting into melee range is simply impossible. It is indeed difficult, said Captain Cullen of one of the player squads, shaking his head. He glanced down the staircase and said, with just our strength, it's very difficult to completely destroy the Pillar of Black Fog. Why don't we wait a little longer? The Federation's official troops should be gathering soon, right? Don't get your hopes up. The Western District Federation has always regarded our Holy Court as a thorn in their side. Now that the Sacred Zone has encountered the Black Fog, they couldn't be happier. Expecting them to come rescue us is pure wishful thinking. A trace of worry flashed in Cullen's eyes as he spoke. The Black Fog is still spreading. If we don't resolve this quickly, its strength will continue to increase, and it will eventually affect the believers in the nearby church district. Everyone, don't act rashly. Let's take a short break before trying again, said Archbishop Wolf, raising a hand to stop the players' discussion. Later, I will find a way to control the binding sarcophagus. Please assist us in clearing out the surrounding arcane red ravens and the doomsday grimoire first, reducing the number of arcane creatures. Then we'll decide on the next step. The group fell silent. It seemed impossible to eliminate the leader beast in one go. They could only take their time to wear it down. Hopefully, they wouldn't be too late. The players exchanged glances, refraining from further discussion, and began recovering in preparation for another attempt. Suddenly, two players specializing in perception stood up, looked toward the staircase, and softly warned, "Be careful, someone's coming." People from the Western District Federation? Immediately, the players became alert, standing up and looking toward the back. In the distance, through the black fog, a lone figure emerged. A gamer was slowly making his way toward them via the staircase. Huh? Was he alone? The black fog zone was teeming with arcane creatures. They themselves had only been able to reach the 6th floor with the help of Holy Court Bishop Wolf. Stop. Who are you? Fang Heng lifted his head, gazing at the group of players gathered at the 6th floor entrance. There were 32 in total. From his perception feedback, aside from the Archbishop, who might be a challenge, the rest should be easy to handle. They appeared to be resting. Fang Heng quickly assessed the situation. He and the Holy Court were already mortal enemies, there was no need to hold back. However, since he couldn't unleash his full power outside of the game, he needed to be cautious. Better to test the waters first. He considered using the aura of sacred study to blend into the team and then look for an opportunity to eliminate them. Fang Heng scanned his surroundings and asked, "Is Archbishop Wolf here?" "Who are you? What business do you have with the Archbishop? Show some respect." Behind the group, Wolf stood up, stopping the players. He stared at Fang Heng for a moment, his eyes flashing with surprise, before respectfully bowing and greeting him. "Archbishop Wolf of the Holy Court greets the Great Sage." "What the hell? Great Sage?" Upon hearing Wolf's words, everyone including the believers of the Holy Court looked as if they had just seen a ghost. Him? A Great Sage of the Holy Court? Beneath the God King were the 12 sages. In the Holy Court, a Great Sage was already considered second only to one, standing above all others. And now, one had appeared before them just like that. Moreover, he looked like an ordinary young man. After the initial shock, someone took the lead, and soon, everyone kneeled on one knee before Fang Heng. "Greetings, Great Sage." Fang Heng was momentarily stunned, his expression of surprise fleeting. Right. He suddenly realized that his current identity was Fang Bei. After the Holy Weapons identity simulation restriction had been lifted, he had deliberately avoided using Fang Heng's appearance and physique to enter the Western District Federation to avoid unnecessary trouble. Right now, he was using Fang Bei's identity. And in the Holy Realm, Fang Bei was still recognized as a Great Sage. Wolf lifted his head and explained, "Ever since the Holy Realm crisis was resolved, an order was issued to search for your whereabouts across all worlds. Your appearance has been recorded in cathedrals everywhere. In fact, during our initial investigations, we discovered through system comparisons that you had entered the Western District Federation by train. Back when he eliminated Suzu in the Holy Realm, he had left immediately to avoid the 12 sages of the Holy Court from noticing any inconsistencies." Fang Heng had never expected that an archbishop in the real world could recognize him based on his appearance and physique alone. "You recognize me?" Wolf lifted his head and explained, "Ever since the Holy Realm crisis was resolved, an order was issued to search for your whereabouts across all worlds. Your appearance has been recorded in cathedrals everywhere. In fact, during our initial investigations, we discovered through system comparisons that you had entered the Western District Federation by train. However, since you neither revealed your identity nor went to the Holy Church, we assumed you had other important matters to handle. To avoid disturbing you, we decided not to interfere." Good grief. So all this time, His movements had been monitored by the Federation. This revealed just how powerful the Holy Court's influence was in the real world. I see. Rise, all of you. Only then did the crowd stand up. Feng Heng swept his gaze over the players before turning to Archbishop Wolf, remaining silent. Great Sage, please rest assured, these people are the Holy Court's most devoted believers. You can trust them completely. Wolf, how much do you know about the Western District Federation's Star Map Project? The Star Map Project is a cooperative agreement secretly made between the Western District Federation and the Spawns. According to the agreement, the Federation will establish the Star Map Project under the guidance of the Spawns while also setting up a front line to resist the spread of the Black Fog. Is that so? That doesn't sound too bad, and it doesn't seem to affect our Holy Court. Great Sage, you may not be aware, Wolf said, shaking his head. This was a last resort. The Spawns are a race that integrates technology with the mind. They have always been staunch technologists, and there has never been any possibility of cooperation between us and them. Moreover, the Spawn's true intention in building the star map is not just for protection. Once the star map is fully constructed, our entire world will fall under their surveillance, and the Spawns will gain complete control over it. At that point, the Holy Court may be forcibly expelled by the Spawns. Great Sage. Player Squad Captain Cullen clasped his fists toward Feng Heng and said, it's not just that. Recently, we've also discovered that the Western District Federation is secretly colluding with the Spawns to stimulate the Black Fog, trying to accelerate its spread and put more of the population in life-threatening danger. Chapter 2855 Identity Today's Black Fog that appeared here is likely to have come from the Federation. Why? Feng Heng frowned and said, did the Western District Federation intentionally spread the Black Fog recently? Why would they do that? It's probably to gain leverage. A large portion of the people don't want the so-called Star Map Project to be established. The spreading of the Black Fog makes the people feel threatened, causing them to more readily believe in the necessity of the Federation establishing the Star Map. Wolf sighed. We, the Holy Court, have spent a lot of resources in this world, but in the end, humanity still doesn't trust us and has chosen to cooperate with the Spawns. From the Holy Court's perspective, Wolf didn't want the Star Map Project to succeed. Great Sage, the Holy Realm has already given orders. We will not take any action until the God King has recovered. For now, we only want to maintain the status quo and find a way to protect the believers of the Holy Court. Feng Heng observed Wolf. At first glance, Wolf seemed to have no ulterior motives. However, it was unclear if there were any hidden interests within. Wolf, I have an important task for you. Wolf respectfully nodded. I am at your service, Great Sage. After the Black Fog incident is resolved, I need you to disappear for a while. We will claim that you went missing during the battle with the Black Fog. Can you do that? Wolf frowned slightly. The participants also cast puzzled looks at Feng Heng. At this moment, the Black Fog incident was ongoing, and the people were already greatly fearful of it. If the Archbishop were to go missing during the battle with the Black Fog, wouldn't the believers of the Holy Court be even more anxious, thinking the Holy Court couldn't provide protection? Wouldn't they be more inclined to trust the Spawns in the Western District Federation? On what side was this suddenly appearing Great Sage? Although Wolf had doubts, he still agreed respectfully, I understand. I will disappear after the Black Fog incident ends. Good. Feng Heng agreed in satisfaction. He had solved the problem so smoothly, much easier than he had anticipated. Moreover, by using the identity of Feng Bei, he could leverage the Holy Court's strength in the real world to do more things. Feng Heng then turned to Cullen and the other players and said, as for you. Cullen met Feng Heng's gaze and immediately felt a chill in his heart. He nodded and said, please rest assured, Great Sage. We will not leak any information about you. Prepare in advance for any inquiries from the Federation. Do not reveal any flaws, Feng Heng said, looking at the large door to the 6th floor entrance. Now, let's deal with the Black Fog. Cullen and his group of players immediately stepped aside, clearing a path. The Great Sage of the Holy Court from the Holy Realm had arrived. Although Archbishop Wolf was extremely respectful towards him, the players still murmured to themselves. Was it real? Besides, if he's a Great Sage, he should be very powerful, right? At least, from their appearance, they couldn't perceive any fluctuation of strength from Feng Heng. Wolf respectfully followed behind Feng Heng, quietly reminding him, Great Sage, we've confirmed that the Pillar of Black Fog is located in the center of the Great Hall on the 6th floor. There are many magical creatures gathered inside the Great Hall, and there is also a commander-level creature, the Binding Sarcophagus, guarding it. It won't be easy to handle. I know. There's no rush. Let's assess the situation first. Feng Heng decided to be cautious. After all, he hadn't unlocked his full strength, and he wasn't sure he could deal with high-tier commander-level creatures. The door had slowly opened, and flashing red and blue light spots appeared in the Great Hall. These were arcane red ravens and the Doomsday Grimoire. Fang Heng's gaze focused on the flickering light spots in the air. The special creatures of the arcane world. To be precise, the Doomsday Grimoire was originally a magical item, imbued with vitality by mages. The arcane red raven was a crow creature that had been transformed by magic. It had long since lost its soul and will, completely becoming a puppet of the mages. Inside the Great Hall, there were at least thousands of arcane creatures, scattered throughout the entire hall, most of which were still in a hibernation state. Great Sage, the arcane creature's attack frequency was fast, and they could lock onto targets. Once we stepped into their range, we would be hit by their concentrated fire attacks. Cullen saw Fang Heng standing at the entrance, observing, and couldn't help but whisper reminder. "All right." Fang Heng replied and looked up. With the blessing of the vampire's eye, Fang Heng saw the situation in the Great Hall clearly. The pillar of black fog was actually located near the depths of the hall. A black stone coffin stood upright in front of the pillar. It should be the binding sarcophagus that Archbishop Wolf had mentioned, Fang Heng thought to himself and took a step forward, walking towards the pillar of black fog. As the invader entered the attack range, red and blue lights in the six-story Great Hall lit up one by one. Whoosh! 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 Countless beams of light shot toward Fang Heng. Cullen and the group of players closely watched Fang Heng's every move, curious about how he would respond. Whoosh! What? Cullen's pupils suddenly shrank as he saw Fang Heng's figure suddenly explode, turning into a shadow in his line of sight. It was too fast. Cullen couldn't fully capture Fang Heng's movement trajectory, only seeing a shadow rapidly moving forward. Fang Heng's explosive speed directly avoided most of the arcane creature's attacks, rushing straight toward the central black fog stone pillar in the Great Hall. Bang! 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 A large number of arcane light beams gathered and locked onto Fang Heng, exploding on the ground behind him. The arcane creatures realized that their locked attacks couldn't lock onto Fang Heng, so they immediately changed tactics and launched indiscriminate coverage attacks. Whoosh! Whoosh! Under the massive barrage of arcane spells, it was impossible to dodge fully just by speed. Cullen stared at the shadow. He couldn't avoid it. Should he use the Holy Shield to forcefully withstand it? Where was the Holy Shield? There was no Holy Shield. Whoosh! More than 10 arcane attacks directly hit Fang Heng, exploding on him. Archbishop Wolf's heart tightened at the sight, instinctively tightening the scepter in his hand. Huh? Cullen let out a surprised sound. It was ineffective. The spells exploded on Fang Heng, but it seemed like they didn't pose any threat to him, and even his speed hadn't slowed down at all. Everyone tightly watched Fang Heng as he rapidly passed through the massive groups of arcane creatures, directly heading toward the central binding sarcophagus in the Great Hall. Terrifying physical defense. Cullen's heart trembled. They had just experienced several waves of arcane creatures' spell bombardments on the 6th floor. The holy barrier that ordinary players could release was reduced by a third of its energy with each arcane light beam hit. Yet Fang Heng had withstood it all with his body. Chapter 2856 The Binding Sarcophagus. Fang Heng's expression remained calm. Arcane creatures belonged to advanced game world creatures. Their spell damage was average, but their attack speed was fast, releasing 1-2 times per second, with some tracking effect. The good news was that the attack didn't have any additional troublesome special effects like freezing or slowing. Therefore, for him, this damage, with the support of his undead abilities, was essentially nothing. It was like immunity. Fang Heng focused his gaze on the black sarcophagus standing in front of the pillar of black fog. A commander-level creature. As he quickly approached, the binding sarcophagus gradually woke up from its petrified state. The surface of the black sarcophagus gradually revealed the tortured, struggling human faces, and dense black fog kept spilling out from the coffin lid. The thick, pitch-black mist formed dense black projectiles in midair, rushing toward Fang Heng. Whoosh! 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 Fang Heng dodged most of the black projectiles, but the remaining dozen or so hit him, exploding into bursts of black fog. Cullen and the other players were startled. Not good. The binding sarcophagus was a creature with both arcane and undead attributes. The necromancy attribute and holy attribute were mutually restrained, especially since the black projectiles had an enhanced corrosion effect, which was very effective at breaking armor. What? But the next moment, Fang Heng emerged from the dissipating black fog. Cullen's expression changed. The attack from the binding sarcophagus had no effect on Fang Heng? Fang Heng was also somewhat surprised. Was this thing a combination of arcane and undead abilities? What a coincidence. His god-level necromancy had high resistance to undead power, and from Fang Heng's perspective, the black projectiles from the binding sarcophagus were even less effective than those from ordinary arcane creatures. Whoosh! 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 Just as Fang Heng was about 10 meters from the binding sarcophagus, Dark black lock chains suddenly emerged from inside the sarcophagus lid and rapidly entangled him. Cullen's heart skipped a beat. Not good. Was he controlled? Huh? It seemed that Fang Heng was entangled by the black iron chains, but his speed wasn't hindered at all, and he continued rushing toward the binding sarcophagus. The black iron chains around Fang Heng's body instantly tightened to the limit. With a massive burst of strength, the black lock chains shattered into pieces. Fang Heng swung his fist and struck the sarcophagus heavily. Boom. Cullen and the other players felt a momentary daze. The muffled sound of the impact seemed to suddenly ring in their minds. Roar. A visible white soul scream erupted from the point where Fang Heng's fist landed and spread outward. Not good. It was a soul impact. Cullen immediately reacted. Everyone be careful. Get behind me. Archbishop Wolf quickly raised his holy shield. Boom. The shockwave spread out instantly, crashing in front of them and breaking through Wolf's holy shield. Cullen quickly lowered his head, raising both hands to shield his head. Boom. Under the soul impact, Cullen immediately felt a violent churn in his sea of consciousness, losing his perception of the outside world. The soul shock effect continued for more than 10 seconds. Cullen finally recovered from the aftermath of the soul impact. The sound of boom echoed in his ears, and he couldn't help but look up again. That was. Cullen looked ahead, a flash of surprise crossing his eyes. 1 punch. 2 punches. Fang Heng stood in front of the binding sarcophagus, repeatedly swinging his fists and smashing it. Each punch caused a small soul impact shockwave to spread out. Ineffective. The soul impact ability of the binding sarcophagus had no effect on Fang Heng. Fang Heng, while enduring the entangling black chains and soul impact from the binding sarcophagus, as well as the numerous arcane Red Raven and Doomsday Grimoire attacks around him, was relentlessly focusing on outputting damage against the sarcophagus. Cullen and the other players watched as the binding sarcophagus gradually developed cracks from Fang Heng's repeated heavy punches. They all displayed expressions of shock. Throughout the entire fight, Fang Heng hadn't used any skills. All the attacks and abilities of the arcane creatures were totally nullified by Fang Heng. Boom. Another dull sound echoed. Fang Heng's fist landed on the lid of the binding sarcophagus. Ka-ka, ka-ka, ka-ka. Boom. The sarcophagus made cracking sounds, and cracks appeared along the direction of the punch. The cracks rapidly spread across the entire sarcophagus until it completely shattered. Boom. It was. The players nervously swallowed and glanced at each other. At first, when they heard Fang Heng was the great sage of the Holy Court, they had some doubts. But now, their doubts had only increased. It seemed that Fang Heng wasn't using any holy skills. In fact, throughout the battle, there had been no sign of holy power fluctuations. It was simply a crushing display of attributes and realm. Boom. 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 The great hall echoed with repeated crashes. Cullen took a deep breath and looked up again. After Fang Heng finished with the binding sarcophagus, he walked toward the pillar of black fog, continuously swinging his fists at the stone pillar. So, Cullen secretly glanced at Archbishop Wolf beside him. What was going on? At the Federation Star Map Control Base, Zoran stormed into Venato's office after hearing the news of Fang Heng's departure, slamming his fist heavily onto the table. Bang! Venato looked up, seeing Captain Zoran's angry face. Venato. I need an explanation. What? Don't tell me these useless things. Assigning missions is indeed within your authority, but sending them to assassinate the Holy Court Bishop? Don't think I don't know what you're up to. Did Cole offer you some benefit? Venato, looking at Zoran's accusing expression, was momentarily confused. Fang Heng. And his team. Why did you send them to Korataban province to deal with the Holy Court? The Federation requires manpower, and I need them to complete a sequence of special missions. Fang Heng's team has the power for it. This mission was approved by the military department and agreed upon by Fang Heng's team. Don't tell me these useless things. Assigning missions is indeed within your authority, but sending them to assassinate the Holy Court Bishop? Don't think I don't know what you're up to. Did Cole offer you some benefit? Captain Zoran, calm down. It's just a mercenary. Why get so angry? Venato stood up to calm Zoran down. What did this mean? The captain had known Fang Heng for barely a day, and now he was furious and coming to ask for an explanation? Zoran was already full of anger. He had been played by Joachim, his ship severely damaged, and now the Star River ship needed to be disassembled and transported, desperately needing Fang Heng's help. He had already prepared the contribution points for Fang Heng, but when he came back, Fang Heng was nowhere to be found. They said he was on a classified mission. Upon further inquiry, he found out that Fang Heng had accepted Venato's special mission to terminate the Archbishop of the Holy Court. Was this a mission for anyone to do? Fang Heng's life and death were irrelevant to him. But he couldn't die now. If Fang Hang died and it affected the relocation plan of the Star River ship. Chapter 2857 Furious Zoran stared intensely at Venado and coldly said, I need Fang Hang to carry out a very important mission. If anything happens to him, I will make sure to investigate you thoroughly. Captain, please calm down. I will immediately send someone to bring Fang Hang and his team back. There will be no problem. You have 2 hours. I need him and his team back and ready to enter the game immediately. If I don't observe them in 2 hours, you know the consequences. Venado watched Zoran storm off, his brows furrowing. Trouble. What ability did this Fang Hang guy have to make Captain Zoran value him so much? Huh. Venado took a deep breath. There was still a chance to fix things. Hopefully, Fang Hang wouldn't act too quickly. Thinking of this, Venado immediately dialed the satellite phone, attempting to contact the Coritaban Province Railway line. At the Coritaban Province Railway platform, Wayne had been pacing back and forth at the entrance of the Black Fog Zone for a while and was starting to get impatient. Why hadn't Mr. Fang come out yet? He said he would go in to investigate, but it's been nearly half an hour already. Could he have run into trouble? Wayne looked around at the other members of his team. Except for his subordinates, everyone else seemed completely calm. How could they not be worried at all? Just as Wayne was wondering whether he should go in to check on the situation himself, there was a commotion near the platform. Lieutenant Virgil, along with a group of Federation soldiers, hurried over. You all. Virgil saw that Wayne and his group hadn't entered the Black Fog Zone to take action yet. He had just started to breathe a sigh of relief when he suddenly spotted that Fang Hang was missing from the crowd. His heart immediately jumped to his throat. Where's Fang Hang? Arkley, who was sitting on a nearby bench waiting, glanced at Virgil and said, the boss went into the Black Fog Zone to investigate. What's the matter? By himself? Is there a problem with that? Are you all crazy? Letting someone enter the Black Fog Zone alone? Arkley sneered and replied, hey, since when does your military department care so much about the life and death of a mere mercenary? The mission has changed. Virgil had no time for verbal sparring with Arkley. He said in a serious tone, your current special mission is cancelled. The military department now requires you to return immediately to the Star Map Control Headquarters and join a special game to assist Captain Zoran in completing a special mission. What kind of nonsense is this? Changing the mission like this? Are you playing with us? Arkley suddenly stood up, glaring at Virgil. His eyes glowed blood red. Human. Are you playing me? Virgil's soldiers immediately raised their guns at Arkley's group. Virgil quickly raised a hand to halt them, explaining, this is an urgent special mission. Captain Zoran personally requested your assistance. I just received the emergency orders and arrived to find you. Arkley, hearing this, calmed down a little. After the mission is completed, relevant personnel will provide a satisfactory explanation, Virgil added, glancing toward the Black Fog entrance. He frowned and asked, Fang Hang really went in by himself? Why would I lie to you? Arkley replied. Virgil fell silent, fuming inside. His superiors were a bunch of idiots. 1 minute, they wanted this group to die, and now they wanted to do everything to save them. Now, Fang Hang had already gone off to execute the mission. His fate was uncertain. These players were all crazy. How could they allow one player to enter the Black Fog Zone alone? Wasn't that a death sentence? Virgil took a deep breath, forcing himself to calm down. There was still a chance. Hopefully, Fang Hang hadn't acted yet, and he could find him in time. It had only been half an hour since Fang Hang entered the Black Fog Zone. There was still a chance. Virgil nodded and said, your mission is over. I'll have someone escort you into the train domain. Once we find Mr. Fang Hang, we'll meet up with you immediately. Wait, Su Guantong stepped forward and said, are you going into the Black Fog Zone to look for Fang Hang? Yes. I'm coming with you. You? But we are Fang Hang's companions. We are familiar with his aura and can help you. Virgil thought for a moment and agreed. The most important person named by the higher-ups was Fang Hang, and the deaths of the others weren't as significant. Fine. Please be careful and don't scatter. The Federation soldiers immediately formed an expedition team, a large group of 30, and they set off to explore the Black Fog Zone. As Virgil's team entered the spreading black fog area, a few soldiers at the front immediately sensed that something was wrong. Huh? What's going on? The players all raised their heads and looked into the sky, noticing that the black fog hovering above was quickly dissipating. Huh? What's happening? The black fog was disappearing? Did someone destroy the pillar of black fog? Virgil's eyes flashed with surprise. So fast? The intensity of this black fog was its highest level. The Federation had predicted that the black fog would last at least 10 more days, and during that time, they planned to weaken the Holy Court's influence significantly. But was it solved so quickly? Had Archbishop Wolf's strength increased drastically recently? Perhaps this was a good thing for them. If the Black Fog was resolved so quickly, Feng Heng's assassination mission against Wolf was essentially a failure. He probably wouldn't risk acting against the Archbishop now. As the Black Fog quickly dissipated, the visibility of the area also improved. That way, Virgil said, clearly knowing the location of the Black Fog's center. He pointed in the direction of the cathedral and led the group of players toward it at a faster pace. After walking for a while, Virgil stopped, and the Federation soldiers followed suit, looking up toward the Holy Court. A figure was rapidly approaching them. Wayne squinted, recognized the person, and suddenly felt a great sense of relief. He quietly said, "Look. It's Mr. Feng." Feng Heng, having dealt with the pillar of black fog at the cathedral, quickly sensed the players near Wayne and his group, then left the cathedral and made his way toward Virgil's team. "Mr. Feng." Feng Heng responded briefly, his gaze focused on Virgil. "The military got here pretty quickly. The mission situation has changed." "Your special mission has been cancelled," Virgil said, then glanced toward the cathedral. He asked, "Did you just come from the cathedral?" "Hold on. The mission was cancelled? Why was it cancelled?" "I need an explanation." Feng Heng frowned and interrupted. "We've already completed the mission. The Federation has no reason to cancel it." "What?" Virgil was stunned by Feng Heng's words, feeling as though he had heard something unbelievable. He lowered his voice and asked, "What do you mean by saying the mission is completed? Did you kill Wolf?" Chapter 2858 Assassination. "Of course," Feng Heng stated as he gestured towards the cathedral in the distance. "Wolf is dead. I think the Holy Court will be out chasing soon, and then you'll see." Virgil looked at Feng Heng with suspicion in his eyes. Was this for real? Just him alone? He snuck into the Black Fog Zone, successfully ambushed and killed the Archbishop of the Holy Court, then casually walked back out in such a short time? It seemed laughable. He really thought the Holy Court was full of fools? But would Feng Heng have any reason to lie to him? Wayne, who had been listening nearby, also felt a chill run down his spine. He did it? Wasn't Mr. Feng just supposed to go into the Black Fog Zone to assess the situation? How did he come back with the mission completed? Feng Heng walked over to the team, noticed Wayne's look, and nonchalantly explained, "I happened to find an opportunity, so I took care of it." This. Wayne was at a loss for words. Was this really something done casually? Virgil, looking towards the cathedral, motioned for the team to move forward. Sure enough, just as Feng Heng had said, about 2 or 3 minutes later, a group of Holy Court players hurriedly ran out of the cathedral. They looked around, seemingly searching for someone. Virgil, with his subordinates, arrived at the front of the cathedral and cupped his fists. "I am Sergeant Virgil of the Federation's Grade 3 Army. You should be believers of the Holy Court, right? I assume you were the ones who tampered with the Pillar of Black Fog? Thank you for your contribution to the stability of the Western District Federation. I am Cullen, a Tier 3 Holy Paladin of the Holy Court Believers." Good heavens. He was really dealt with by Feng Heng. Cullen's eyes flashed with some urgency. "Let's not talk about that for now. Archbishop Wolf encountered an unknown enemy attack while dealing with a pillar of black fog, which caused an explosion. Currently, the Archbishop's life or death is unknown. I request the Federation to assist in locating him." Upon hearing this, everyone's hearts skipped a beat. Good heavens. He was really dealt with by Feng Heng. Virgil's heart trembled, and the surprise in his eyes was genuine. He immediately asked, "Who was it? Who could defeat the Archbishop?" "I'm not sure, but when the black fog dispersed, I saw what seemed like a shadow pass by. I suspect it might have been him ambushing Archbishop Wolf." "Did you see anyone else when you came here?" "We didn't see anyone along the way, only saw you come out." "That's strange." Cullen furrowed his brows, murmuring to himself, "Could it be that my perception was off?" "Lieutenant Virgil." Cullen looked at Virgil with a serious expression. "The Archbishop went missing during the battle with the Pillar of Black Fog. I hope the Federation can mobilize to help search for the Archbishop's whereabouts. The Holy Court will be very grateful." Virgil glanced in the direction of the group and then gave a side eye to Feng Heng. He nodded and said, "Definitely. Star Map Control Center." "What did you say?" Venado stood up from his chair in shock upon hearing the news over the satellite phone that Feng Heng had completed the mission. "Are you sure it was Feng Heng who took out the Archbishop?" After a moment, Venado hung up the phone and fell into silence. Whether he had seen Feng Heng personally kill Wolf, the Archbishop, was no longer important. What mattered now was that the Archbishop had indeed gone missing. According to Feng Heng's story, Wolf was ambushed during his battle with the Pillar of Black Fog, caught by a soul chain attack, and died together with the binding sarcophagus. Subsequently, Virgil immediately checked the entire cathedral and indeed found no trace of the Archbishop. It was highly likely he was dead. So, They really completed the mission? This was unbelievable. What kind of person was Feng Heng to be able to complete a mission like this? Hey! Suddenly, Venato let out a light chuckle. It was actually a good thing. He was the one who had introduced Feng Heng to complete the mission, so he'd also get some credit on the Federation Military Department's record. As for the conflict between Feng Heng and Cole, not his concern. He could just push everything onto Captain Zoran. While thinking, there was a knock on the door. Come in. Venato grinned and stood up to greet Feng Heng and the others as they returned. Welcome back, everyone. Congratulations on completing a difficult mission. I've already submitted your Federation secret agent applications right away. Arkley smirked and said, Lieutenant Venato, are we going to have to wait several weeks again for the secret agent's identity? Haha, not at all. It will be done in a day, at most 1 day. I've already arranged for the unlocking process to start immediately. Venato was in a good mood, not bothered by Arkley's sarcasm, but as you all know, the unlocking process isn't that simple. The military department also needs to arrange for special instructors to teach you. I've already scheduled the coaching group for you, and they are expected to arrive by noon tomorrow. Then you'll be able to start learning right away. Arkley pouted, seemingly acknowledging this explanation. At least this time, the guy didn't keep making trouble. Su Guantong asked, I heard you urgently called us back because of Captain Zoran? Yes, Captain Zoran has an urgent mission for you. However, since you've completed a special mission and become part of the Western District Federation Secret Agent Group, the decision to accept this mission is up to you. Everyone looked at Feng Heng. Feng Heng stretched and thought for a moment. Captain Zoran's invitation. He might as well go and see. After all, he still needed a significant amount of contribution points for the Grandmaster level psychic skill exchange. Let's go. We're not doing anything else anyway. Let's see what Captain Zoran wants with us. 10 minutes later, everyone logged into the game again and boarded the Star River ship. Feng Heng. Captain Zoran breathed a sigh of relief upon seeing Feng Heng return and said, It's so great that you made it in time. I have a special mission that requires your help. Captain. Feng Heng nodded to Zoran and turned his gaze to the people beside him. By the way, I forgot to introduce them. This is Captain Taylor from the Langsing, and these two are inspectors sent by the Federation. Zoran introduced the people next to him and then gestured toward Feng Heng. This is Feng Heng, the one I mentioned to you, an excellent mercenary. Everyone looked at Feng Heng. Feng Heng, however, looked at Shylock beside him. This guy was from the Federation inspection team? It should be the second time they met, but why did it feel like he was looking at him strangely? Shylock stared at Feng Heng, animosity filling his eyes. Feng Heng. Previously, when he bet with Captain Zoran, the ore contribution points that Feng Heng submitted were supposed to be covered by the inspection department. Just now, Shylock had received the detailed data from his subordinate. A whole 100 million contribution points. When Shylock saw the number, he almost vomited blood. Zoran really dug a deep hole for him. He nearly fell into it. Shylock still didn't know how he would report this expenditure. Chapter 2859 Help Zoran had no time to pay attention to Shylock's gaze at the moment. After introducing both parties, he immediately got to the point. Feng Heng, time is tight, so I'll keep it brief. You may have heard of the pheromones of the infected worms. Currently, a large portion of our ship's internal areas is filled with these pheromones, which has led to us being encircled and attacked by dense swarms of worms. The number of worms will continue to increase and is expected to peak in 10 hours. Given our current capabilities, we fear we won't be able to continue expending significant elite manpower and resources against the swarm. Therefore, we have decided to temporarily split parts of the ship and transport them to a newly set up temporary stronghold. The outer mutant worm swarm is launching increasingly fierce attacks. The reinforcement ship, Langsing, also has other, more critical missions and will leave in 4 hours. This means that our time is very limited. We are willing to offer 1 billion contribution points and hope that all of you can help us with the ship's disassembly and transportation. 1 billion. Everyone present, except for Feng Heng, was shocked, including the players and soldiers. What a deal. Such an elite move. Zoran looked at Feng Heng. He had checked Feng Heng's past contribution point records and knew very well that to Feng Heng, 1 billion contribution points were merely a day or two's work. Feng Heng, if you can help us, I personally owe you a favor. Captain Taylor's eyelid twitched slightly upon hearing this, a trace of doubt flashing through his eyes. Zoran was using an almost pleading tone with such a young man? What kind of power did this young man possess? Standing behind Taylor, Joachim looked at Feng Heng, his fists clenched tightly and his gaze filled with hatred. That brat. He was still alive. And he was about to earn 1 billion contribution points for nothing? Why? Joachim had spent significant effort sabotaging the experimental area, causing the crystal worms to mutate, yet it had ultimately benefited Fang Heng instead? Fang Heng listened to Zoran's mission request and quickly calculated in his mind. Only 1 billion. It wasn't exactly a great deal. But with Captain Zoran offering a favor in addition, it could be considered a worthwhile investment. Of course, Captain Zoran, you're being too polite. I accept the mission, and we'll do our best. That's a great relief. Thank you. Federation Supervisor Shylock observed Fang Heng and his team in silence. For a moment, he truly suspected that something was going on between Fang Heng and Captain Zoran. After all, the captain was outsourcing a ship conveyance project for a staggering 1 billion contribution points. But then he reconsidered. Thinking about how Fang Heng had just earned 1 billion contribution points by trading ores, Shylock fell silent. At this moment, he was very interested to see just how far Fang Heng could go and whether Zoran's massive expenditure would be worth it. At the very least, it would make writing the expenditure report easier when he returned. Zoran continued with the introduction. This is Chief Engineer Mr. Pang. He will be in charge of the ship's disassembly. We will begin immediately. The Federation Military Department will fully cooperate. Understood. Chief Engineer Peng Li was slightly surprised when he saw Fang Heng again, but he quickly shifted into work mode, stepping forward to discuss the details with him in a low voice. With a wave of his hand, Fang Heng drew a circle on the ship and said, "Cut away only the areas contaminated by pheromones. Take everything else with us. All of it. Fang Heng, we need to determine the size and number of sections to be dismantled first, as this affects the overall progress and the subsequent reassembly. Also, we need to decide which parts to abandon." Fang Heng glanced at the blueprint. Even though there was no official mission trigger, since he had agreed to help Captain Zoran, he figured he should take the job seriously. With a wave of his hand, Fang Heng drew a circle on the ship and said, "Cut away only the areas contaminated by pheromones. Take everything else with us. All of it." Chief Engineer Peng Li was slightly taken aback by Fang Heng's decision, but after a moment, he nodded and said, "Understood. I'll get to work right away." Joachim watched as Fang Heng and his team gathered to discuss the transportation plan, his eyes darkening. Fang Heng. Couldn't kill you no matter what, huh? After outlining the relocation plan, Fang Heng lowered his head and began remotely controlling his zombie clones to excavate and expand the underground passages. The plan was simple. Dig a larger passage underground, then use the zombie clones to assist in transporting the dismantled ship sections back to the new Federation stronghold. Since some of the ship sections were massive after being cut, the original underground passage also needed to be widened and reinforced. Mr. Fang. Fang Heng was focused on his operation when Wayne interrupted him. He looked up and asked, "What is it?" Wayne gestured toward Captain Taylor on the right and whispered, "The young man standing behind Captain Taylor, the one not wearing a Federation uniform, that's Joachim, the person I mentioned to you earlier." "Oh? So it's him?" Fang Heng narrowed his eyes slightly. Although there was no direct evidence, everyone had previously deduced that Joachim was most likely the one who had caused trouble for them. Wayne cautioned, "Mr. Fang, Joachim is ruthless. Now that he just so happens to appear on the ship, he might try something against us again. We need to be careful." Fang Heng remotely placed a vampire imprint on Joachim and then looked up. "I'll handle it. Are your people ready? Soon, you'll need to move supplies into the underground passage. I don't trust the Federation personnel, so I won't let them enter the underground domain." "I understand. We're fully prepared. As soon as the supplies start transitioning into the cavern, we can begin transporting them at any time." "Good." The critical supplies from the Star River ship had already been sorted in advance. Some were being transported using the ship's aircraft. However, the aircraft were far from enough. Most of the items still had to rely on Fang Heng's underground passage for transportation. Soon, the Federation soldiers followed instructions, packed up the supplies, and transported them through the transition passage to the surface, where they were then thrown into a 5 to 6 meter diameter hole. Two inspectors stood on the deck of the Langsing, observing the large pit below with amazement. Incredible. Fang Heng summoned creatures were really this powerful? To facilitate transportation, the original underground hole had been expanded from just over a meter in diameter to 5 or 6 meters. The Federation soldiers only needed to toss items down, and somehow, Fang Heng could make them reappear at another exit, as if by magic. Not far away, Joachim also noticed this scene, his fists clenched tightly. Fang Heng. His summoned creatures. Joachim immediately recalled what had happened to his mining areas not long ago. Fang Heng had used this same ability digging an underground passage to launch surprise attacks and forcibly seize several of his mining areas. Absolutely inhuman. "Boss, we..." Joachim narrowed his eyes, pondering for a moment. A sinister glint appeared in his gaze as he asked, "How many infected worms do we have left?" His subordinate shrank back at the question and replied hesitantly, none. There weren't many to begin with, and we used them all last time to awaken the crystal worms. Chapter 2860, Cutting Trash. Joachim cursed and lowered his head in thought. The trouble was that Captain Zoran had already begun to suspect him and was monitoring him extremely closely. As soon as he entered the Star River ship, Federation soldiers would immediately follow behind him under strict vigilance. So, there was still another place where he could obtain a high concentration of pheromones to attract mutant worms. The rear section of the warehouse. According to the plan, the entire dismantled Star River ship warehouse had already been separated, rapidly frozen, and then loaded into the Langsing ship. The Langsing ship was controlled by Captain Taylor, who had no defenses against him at all. He only needed to find a way to enter the warehouse, obtain some high-concentration pheromones left behind by the crystal worms, and then find a way to place them inside the cargo that Feng Heng was transporting. By then, the mutant worm swarm outside would crazily chase after Feng Heng's team. Not only Feng Heng, but also Zoran. Did they really think that establishing a new safe zone meant everything would be fine? Joachim sneered and looked up to ask, "What's the situation at the rear section of the ship warehouse? Has the cutting and transportation been completed?" His subordinate nodded and said, "We just confirmed that the entire rear warehouse section of the Star River ship has been rapidly frozen and loaded onto the Langsing ship. The Langsing ship has already arranged soldiers for guard duty, and the inspection team also has personnel monitoring it." As the liquor swarm completed the secondary expansion of the underground passage, large chunks of the ship's metal wreckage, cut by Engineer Peng Li's team, were continuously placed into the pit using cranes. Wayne and a group of players stayed at the bottom of the pit to receive the wreckage, securely fastening the ship's metal onto the transport plates. The liquors then transported it through the passage to the other exit area, handing it over to the Arkley team for secondary distribution. Feng Heng stood on the ship's deck, checking the game log and remotely monitoring the liquor swarm's movements, ready to respond to any sudden events. Huh? Suddenly, Feng Heng raised an eyebrow. The vampire imprint left on Joachim showed an anomaly. That guy couldn't resist making a move? Feng Heng lifted his head and looked toward the Langsing ship. Judging from the direction of his perception, Joachim had gone toward the rear section of the Langsing ship. He had just been under surveillance on the Langsing ship, so why go to the rear cabin now? Had he given up? Feng Heng remained wary of Joachim and continued assigning transport materials. After some time, Joachim lingered in the rear cabin of the Langsing ship for a while before returning to the area where Peng Li's team was cutting up the ship, wandering back and forth. He even seemed to have had some minor conflicts with the engineers and was eventually kicked out. Feng Heng grew even more suspicious of him and simply leaped down from the deck, heading to the ship's decomposition area where Joachim had just been. "Mr. Feng, do you need any help? The captain ordered us to fully cooperate with your actions." Peng Li and his engineering team were busy cutting up the ship. Two squad captains from the Star River ship's soldiers noticed Feng Heng and approached to nod and greeting. "I need to ask something. Joachim was here just now?" "Yes, he said they lost some important items and wanted to search for them, but Captain Zoran ordered that no one except internal personnel could approach, so we stopped them." But Joachim still wandered around the area for a while and then tried to go deeper. "After we stopped him again, he finally gave up and left." Feng Heng let out a soft hum and extended his perception. "Huh?" Feng Heng's gaze quickly focused on the cargo boxes that were being moved. A faint sense of the seed of Ouroboros. Was it pheromones from the infected worms? Normally, pheromones had a very low concentration, making them difficult to detect. But the pheromone concentration on those cargo boxes was extremely high. At such a close range, he could still sense it. In an instant, Feng Heng understood. So that's it. Joachim. Was he trying to mix the pheromones into the transported cargo and then lure a portion of the mutant worm swarm toward Captain Zoran's newly established base? Such deep hatred. If the base were suddenly attacked by a worm swarm, his transport team wouldn't have much trouble, but the Federation's branch base had just been completed. Its defensive facilities weren't fully established yet, and its defensive capabilities were limited. It might not be able to hold out. Wait. So he had just gone to the rear cabin to find a way to get the pheromones? Feng Heng immediately thought of something and almost laughed out loud. This time, Joachim had outsmarted himself and ended up shooting himself in the foot. As for the swarm of mutant worms attracted by the pheromones, Feng Heng didn't take them seriously at all. With this in mind, Feng Heng quickly controlled and gathered a group of lickers, directing them to move stealthily through the underground passage toward the other exit of the Federation's branch base. "Mr. Feng Heng, did you discover something wrong?" "Nothing." Feng Heng smiled and looked up. "Did you report this to the captain?" The soldier shook his head. Since there hadn't been any direct conflict, they hadn't originally planned to report it. "Go report this to Zoran. Be smart about it. Make sure the inspection department's Shylock, who's always following Zoran, hears about this too. The two soldiers exchanged glances and then nodded. Understood. The Federation's temporary branch base. Under Fang Heng's arrangement, Arkley, Zaka, and more than 10 other players had gathered here through the underground passage. Their main responsibility was to transport the materials brought up from underground to the surface and hand them over to the Federation personnel for allocation. While they were carrying supplies, a commotion suddenly arose among the Federation soldiers behind them, with many pointing and gesturing towards something. What's going on? Zaka instinctively raised his head and looked behind him. Holy! His heart skipped a beat. In the distance, massive clouds of yellow dust were rising. Mutant worms. A massive swarm of mutant worms was gathering and charging across the wasteland, kicking up so much dust that it blotted out the sky, looking like the arrival of the apocalypse. The captain of the Federation team's expression changed slightly. Quick! Report to the captain. Request reinforcements. This was strange. Before selecting the location for the new base, they had conducted on-site investigations and confirmed that there were very few mutant creatures in the area. Besides, weren't most of the mutant worms already lured away toward the ship? But this swarm was clearly heading straight for their base. All units, stay alert. The Federation soldiers quickly got into combat positions, raising their energy weapons and taking cover behind the base's defensive structures, ready to fire at any moment. Buzz. Nearby, several transition teleportations flashed. When Engineer Peng Li built the temporary base, he made sure to set up a teleportation passage as soon as possible. However, due to energy limitations, the number of teleportation uses and the amount of transported personnel were severely restricted, making it an unreliable method for mass transport. As soon as Zoran received the report, he and a group of guards immediately teleported to the base. Seeing the massive swarm of mutant worms rushing toward them, Zoran furrowed his brows tightly. Chapter 2861, Disposition. Shylock, the Federation's inspection officer, immediately rushed over upon hearing that the branch base was in trouble. As soon as he arrived through the teleportation passage, the sight before him made his scalp tingle. So many. This was bad. The sheer number of mutant worms was terrifying. If the sub-base were to be destroyed as well, the entire military department's strategic deployment on this planet would be a complete failure. Although he wasn't part of the military, Shylock genuinely didn't want to see such a disaster unfold. Captain, didn't you say the branch base was safe? Why are we being targeted by the swarm again? I don't know. Right now, we have no choice but to hold our ground. Zoran's expression was solemn as he raised his hand, organizing the player teams to resist the swarm. The various Federation squads and Arkley's group of players, who had been carrying supplies, quickly gathered together with the Federation teams, preparing to face the oncoming insect horde. Zaka was so nervous that his hands, gripping the energy beam gun, were drenched in sweat. Faced with such an overwhelming swarm, the entire base felt like a lone leaf in a raging tide on the verge of being swallowed whole. Suddenly, Zaka noticed something. His eyes lit up with excitement as he shouted, "Boss Fang!" Everyone turned their heads. Fang Heng had just arrived through the teleportation passage into the temporary sub-base. "Fang Heng, you're here." Seeing Fang Heng, Zoran immediately felt more confident. He nodded at him and called out, "The swarm is coming in full force. We'll need your help." Of course, Fang Heng stepped forward. "I did take the captain's money and promised to protect the base with everything I've got." Shylock, however, was far from reassured. He glanced at Fang Heng before turning his nervous gaze back to the approaching swarm. The swarm was this massive. What could just one Fang Heng possibly do? Should they retreat now? A vast cloud of dust covered the land as the red-colored swarm charged toward the base at high speed. The sky darkened as if the apocalypse itself had arrived. "Report, sir. The scanners have detected a large number of mutant worms rapidly approaching. Current detection shows 3 commander-level creatures, 29 elite-level creatures, and the total number of normal mutant worms has exceeded 200,000. Captain Zoran stared at the incoming swarm, his voice deep and steady. "Prepare for battle." "Yes, sir." Shylock listened to the report and felt his scalp go numb. Damn it. The swarm even had commander-level and elite-level monsters. How were they supposed to fight this? Back on the ship, they could use the high-powered beam weapons to pinpoint and eliminate the occasional commander or elite mutant worm. But here at the branch base, they had only just set up, and they hadn't had time to build or install large-scale heavy weapons. With their current firepower, just dealing with the swarm would be incredibly difficult, let alone fighting commander-level creatures. What now? Shylock rarely had to experience combat firsthand, and watching the overwhelming swarm charge toward them made cold sweat break out all over his body. The Federation soldiers gripped their energy beam guns tightly, crushing their specialized stimulant injectors to enhance their combat state, their eyes locked on the distance, awaiting Zoran's command to fire. Tens of thousands of bone-eating fungal ants surged forward, their chitinous limbs clattering against the rocky ground, creating a deafening chorus of clack sounds. Their obsidian-like exoskeletons glistened under the harsh sunlight, reflecting an oily sheen. Shylock was at his breaking point with anxiety. What? Suddenly, about 300 meters away from the temporary stronghold, the barren ground trembled violently. Cracks split open across the surface. Kai. From within the fissures, brown, spiky creatures burst forth one after another, charging straight toward the incoming swarm. Mutant worms? Summoned creatures? Shylock's head snapped toward Fang Heng. He recognized them. Fang Heng summoned creatures, the lickers. He had seen them before on the ship. The licker swarm erupted from the ground and crashed into the incoming mutant worm horde, causing the battlefield to instantly explode with dense clouds of blood mist. The Federation soldiers stared at the battlefield in shock. They actually held the line. Fang Heng summoned mutant worm swarm formed a barricade of flesh and blood, firmly holding back the tide of insects 300 meters away. Shylock's heart trembled violently. What a formidable summon creature. He had previously seen lickers fight against mutant worms, but the visual impact of the current battlefield was on a completely different level. Severed limbs flew through the air. All the incoming bone-eating fungal ants were swiftly torn apart into exploding chunks of flesh and blood as soon as they reached the lickers' defensive line. Shylock turned to look at Fang Heng, his heart pounding wildly. He opened his mouth, his Adam's apple moving with difficulty, about to say something. Boom. Shylock quickly turned back as the ground in front of them suddenly exploded. Bang. A massive mutant worm, the long-legged earth dragon, burst out from underground, smashing through a section of the licker's interception line. Not good. It was a commander-level creature, the long-legged earth dragon. It resembled a giant centipede, its enormous body stretching up to 30 meters long. Covered in thick armor, it was a commander-level creature with immense physical impact and defensive capabilities. Ho! The mutant worm leader shot out of the ground, using its powerful body to break through the licker blockade and charge toward the Federation's temporary base at full speed. Zoran locked his gaze onto the approaching mutant worm leader and signaled with his hand. Aim at the mutant worm leader. Fire. The Federation soldiers at the rear simultaneously pulled their triggers. Whoosh. Whoosh whoosh. A dense barrage of energy beams shot toward the commander-level mutant worm, exploding in bright bursts as they struck its massive body. Due to its enormous size, the mutant worm leader lacked the agility to dodge the beams and was forced to endure the full impact. Roar. The commander-level mutant worm howled in pain, its movement slowing down. At the same time, after one round of firing, the focused energy beam guns entered cool down. The soldiers were just about to switch to short-frequency energy weapons to continue their assault when Zoran suddenly raised his hand, signaling them to stop. Cease fire. Hiss. Hiss hiss hiss. More lickers crawled out from the underground rifts surrounding the mutant worm leader, swiftly charging at it with their jaws wide open. Hiss. Hiss hiss hiss. The licker swarm used their razor-sharp fangs to latch onto the mutant worm leader's body. With their high-strength attributes combined with their armor-breaking bite effect, the licker's teeth pierced straight through the thick outer armor of the mutant worm leader. The lickers refused to let go, clinging on to the commander-level mutant worm like parasites while slashing at it relentlessly with their claws, further breaking through its defenses. Within moments, the massive creature was covered in a thick layer of lickers, their relentless attacks slowing its charge significantly. Soon, it was forcibly dragged to a halt, unable to move forward. Roar. The mutant worm leader let out another furious roar, violently thrashing its body in an attempt to shake off the lickers biting into its flesh. However, due to its sheer size, its efforts proved to be extremely ineffective. Chapter 2862, Contaminated, Ding. The player's zombie clone, Licker, dealt 4,226 damage to the mutant worm leader, mutated long-legged earth dragon, Ding. The player's zombie clone, Licker, dealt 3,741 damage to the mutant worm leader, mutated long-legged earth dragon, Hey. Fang Heng saw the game hints displaying the commander-level mutant worm's HP slowly decreasing and let out a disdainful chuckle. Commander-level mutant worm. So, it was nothing special after all. As long as his clones attacked, they could take it down. The Federation soldiers clenched their guns tightly as they watched the struggling mutant worm leader fall into a desperate situation. Goodness. Was a summoned creature really this terrifyingly powerful? Even a commander-level mutant worm couldn't break through the summoned creature's siege? Zaka, watching from the side, felt his scalp tingle. Everyone knew that a world lord was strong, but they never had a clear concept of just how strong. Now, seeing it firsthand, A deep sense of helplessness arose within him. Who could possibly fight against this? Captain Zoran looked at Fang Heng and nodded slightly in gratitude. If Fang Heng hadn't stepped in, their temporary base would have had no chance of survival. The players were still in shock at the strength of the summoned creatures. Boom. Boom boom boom. Beyond the liquor defensive line, over 300 meters from the camp, several elite-level mutated worms and another wave of commander-level insect swarms appeared, breaking through the liquor's blockade. Prepare to fire. Zoran commanded steadily. Hold them back. The Federation soldiers had already prepared. Their beam weapons locked onto and fired upon the elite and commander-level mutant worms that had broken through the defenses. More liquors continued to emerge from the rifts in the ground, pouncing once again on the insect swarm that the Federation had temporarily intercepted, firmly restraining them one by one. There were still more? Just how many mutant creatures could he control at the same time? Shylock glanced at Fang Heng, a trace of fear flashing in his eyes. Come to think of it. Where exactly had the sky, Fang Heng, come from? Now that the situation had stabilized, Shylock's wildly pounding heart finally began to calm down. He couldn't help but glance at Captain Zoran beside him. Zoran was quite the talent. He had only spent 1 billion contribution points to recruit such a player. That was a ridiculously good deal. The temporary stronghold actually withstood the mutant worm swarm's attack? Interesting. 3 hours later, Taylor stood in the main control room of the ship, listening to the report from his subordinates and muttering to himself. Have you found out the reason behind the sudden outbreak of the mutated insect swarm attacking the temporary base? The military department will be conducting a joint investigation with the inspection department. No conclusions have been reached yet. However, after the camp resisted the first wave of attacks, they carefully examined a recent batch of transported materials and found that the teleportation materials were contaminated with a high concentration of pheromones. They suspect that the anomaly in the insect swarm was caused by these pheromones. Oh? When did the contamination occur? It is still under investigation, but I heard they are looking into Joachim. Joachim? Why? They say Joachim was near that batch of problematic teleportation materials earlier. Taylor narrowed his eyes upon hearing this. Joachim? He didn't know much about Joachim. The only reason he had brought him along this time was because of Minister Zachary. Did Joachim really have the guts to stir up such trouble? As he was contemplating, 2 transition beams lit up inside the ship. Captain Zoran and Western District Federation Chief Inspector Shylock stepped out from the transition passage. Gentlemen, you've worked hard. I heard that the battle at the temporary camp has came to an end. The swarm has mostly dispersed. We managed to withstand the attack. During the defense against the swarm, Zoran had immediately ordered a portion of the suspected contaminated materials to be teleported away and destroyed as soon as he realized there might be an issue with the new batch of supplies. After that, the swarm's aggression instantly weakened. It was clear that the pheromone contamination on the supplies was intentional. As for who was responsible, Zoran already had a suspect in mind. Joachim. Zoran put the matter of revenge aside for the moment and felt somewhat relieved. Fortunately, he had made the quick decision to pull Fang Heng back from his real-world mission. Otherwise, even the temporary base would not have survived. We discovered that some of the transported goods had high concentrations of mutant worm pheromones. We are suspicious of how the pheromones ended up there. Our inspectors will conduct further investigation, he said. Shylock nodded from the side, continuing, we may need both of you, captains, to cooperate with the investigation moving forward. Captain Taylor, upon hearing that an investigation was underway, remained silent. Meanwhile, the ship's operator looked up and reported, Captain, the ship's positioning has been completed. We can transition and evacuate at any time. Captain Zoran, we just made contact with headquarters. The Zing ship will remain in this world for now to rest and await reinforcements. Once we're done here, we'll come as quickly as possible. All right, understood. Well, if there's nothing else, we'll be heading out. Shylock nodded to Zoran as he bid farewell. The inspection team will continue with the investigation alongside the Langsing ship. Captain Zoran, farewell. Safe travels. Meanwhile, below the ship, Wayne and his team of players transported the final batch of dismantled shipwreck parts to the surface and entered the underground cavern. They watched as the mutant worms began to block the cavern's exits, each worm collapsing and gasping for air. Finally, it was done. Fang Heng stayed on the surface, watching as the ship was quickly overwhelmed by the mutant worm swarm. He shook his head slightly, silently thinking to himself how unfortunate it was. With the ship's destruction, the connection between the ship and its spawn mainframe was severed. For the time being, he wouldn't be able to continue exchanging ores for contribution points using the mainframe. Engineer Peng Li would rebuild the mainframe at a new location, finding a way to restore its function. For the time being, aside from slowly accumulating ores, the only thing he could do was help Peng Li construct the ship. Perfect? Calculating the time, He thought that after a good rest, the Federation's training team should arrive smoothly. The next step would be to focus on completing the unlocked tasks in the real world. Feng Heng jumped into the underground cavern, commanding the lickers to seal off the entrance completely. He glanced once more at Wayne and his team of players, who were resting. Alright, let's wrap it up. Meanwhile, aboard the Langsing ship, in the middle of a starship transition, Joachim was not happy. TCH. How did they manage to escape? He had heard that Captain Zoran had discovered the contaminated goods with pheromones and had acted decisively to eliminate them, allowing them to survive the mutant worm swarm's assault. Joachim, what are you trying to say? Captain, Feng Heng is dangerous. He needs to be eliminated as soon as possible. I know you have some personal history with him, but you need to understand the current situation. This is not your time. Also, I've heard something quite interesting. Chapter 2863, Explosion. Captain Taylor's expression gradually darkened as he stared at Joachim and said, I heard that someone entered the Star River ship's cabin before the mutant worm outbreak and that an anonymous report also appeared in the inspection department at that time. Captain, this matter has nothing to do with me. Is that so? Why did I hear that you had previously entered the disassembled Star River ship and nearly had a conflict with the Star River's military forces? Captain, what are you implying? If there is evidence, you can speak directly. Taylor withdrew his gaze from Joachim, coldly warning, don't make me find evidence. The only reason you're still on this ship is because of Minister Zachary's influence. I hope you realize that and refrain from taking any actions, or else. Just then, the ship's doors opened with a rapid caw-caw-caw. A soldier rushed in, visibly nervous. Report, Captain. There's an issue in the aft laboratory. What? Taylor immediately stood up, take me there. Joachim's mind stirred, and he immediately followed. They quickly arrived at the frozen aft warehouse, where Shylock had already arrived with the inspection team, securing the scene. Taylor looked at Shylock and asked with a frown, what's going on? Shylock shook his head and motioned for everyone to clear the way. Taylor, accompanied by the others, approached the warehouse and immediately noticed something strange. The laboratory appeared normal compared to before, except for the fact that the crystal worm's flesh cocoon was missing from the corner. Where was the crystal worm? Taylor's pupils contracted, and he looked at a soldier nearby, demanding, what happened? No, I don't know. The soldiers guarding the ship's exterior shook their heads and said, we heard unusual sounds from inside a little while ago, so we immediately initiated the procedure to investigate. When we entered, we found that the crystal worm's flesh cocoon was missing. Who else came here? All the inspection team members were with us guarding outside. Except for Leader Keith, who took his research team to conduct the check, no one else. No one else. The soldier paused, his gaze shifting to Joachim standing behind Taylor. Instantly, all eyes turned to Joachim. Joachim's pupils shrank, and his face changed slightly. He swore to the heavens that he had indeed come here, but it was only to take some of the crystal worm's pheromones. When he came, the crystal worm was completely normal. Captain, I did come here, but I only wanted to check the ship. I didn't do anything. Joachim said. Shut up. Taylor fixed his gaze on Joachim and said in a low voice, the only people who came here were you and my people. Who do you think I should believe? This. Joachim's mind went blank for a moment, unable to defend himself. He looked at Dr. Keith, confused. The disappearance of the crystal worm had nothing to do with him. So, it must have been Dr. Keith? Why would the doctor steal the crystal worm? No, wait. Suddenly, Joachim remembered the reason he had come here, his face went pale, and a terrifying thought appeared in his mind. Could it be Feng Heng? Take him away, keep him under tight surveillance, and connect with headquarters immediately. Taylor ordered. The next day, the sun shone down on the earth as usual. Wayne's team of players had worked tirelessly as porters and sorters in the game for 2 days, and they finally returned to the real world to get a good night's rest. By noon, they lazily got out of bed and had lunch, then gathered in the first-floor hall of the Western District Federation building. The teaching team hired by the Western District Federation had officially arrived. In the campus area, many mercenary teams had already heard that some teams had unlocked the lock method and gathered in the high floors of the building, peeking down at the first-floor hall where the gathering was taking place. On the 7th floor, the deputy director of the military department in charge of the Star Map project, Sigmund, looked down at the hall from above, accompanied by several officers. I didn't expect Teacher Benny to personally take on the mission and came to guide the training. His assistant replied, I heard that the elite player training for unlocking the ability didn't produce ideal results, so Mr. Benny wanted to improve the cultivation intensity and test some more aggressive training on this batch of mercenaries to enhance efficiency later on. I see. Make sure to take good care of Teacher Benny. Yes. Benny's identity was special. He was one of the Federation's members, with a high status in the Western District Federation and deep connections. He had also been one of the first batch of internal testers to enter the game, with formidable strength. In addition, Benny had served as the leader of an assassination team under the Federation, later organizing multiple training sessions in the military department and holding the position of Minister of Internal Training. Many high-ranking officers in the military department of the Western District Federation would respectfully address Benny as teacher. On the first-floor hall, Fang Heng and the 20 or so players participating in the trial lined up. Zaka, standing next to Fang Heng, whispered, "TCH, still have to queue up, it's like we're elementary school students doing morning exercises." The accompanying teaching team of more than 50 people arrived and immediately split into pairs, standing on either side of the players. An elderly man with a cane made of gnarled poplar wood walked to the front of the group. "Everyone, I'm Benny, the chief instructor for this training. I'll be responsible for your unlocking ability training in the coming period. First, I must explain that our Western District Federation's unlocking method is different from the one used by the Central Federation. So, regardless of your previous foundation in lock ability cultivation, we will start from scratch. Of course, if any of you have already completed part of the unlocking process, your progress will be faster." Benny's voice was a bit hoarse, and his eyes, narrowed into slits, scanned each player. "Let's not waste any more time. We'll start with a simple basic test to assess your fundamental abilities. If your abilities don't qualify for unlocking, we won't waste time on you. Let's begin." As soon as Benny finished speaking, a powerful spiritual pressure erupted from him, rapidly bearing down on the players. The invisible mental strength pressure engulfed the players like a tidal wave. All the players were simultaneously struck by a massive mental shock. Zaka felt his brain explode with a boom, and everything in front of him blurred. He staggered for a moment but managed to stay on his feet and endure the first wave of the shock, inwardly cursing. "Damn. It's a mental shock." Players with weaker basic mental attributes immediately passed out from the shock, collapsing to the ground. The teaching team on the side had already made preparations, and they lifted the unconscious players and pulled them out of the trial area. Chapter 2864, Teaching Group. The mental shock continued. The remaining players became aware of the mental shock and quickly activated their mental strength to construct spiritual resistance defenses, desperately resisting the mental strength shock coming from the old man. Arkley's forehead veins bulged as he clenched his teeth, staring hard at the old man. Where did this old man come from? Just standing there and releasing a mental shock was enough to leave him completely immobilized. Benny glanced at the 8 players still standing in place and nodded silently to himself. This batch of players had pretty good qualities. To optimize the selection of test subjects, the mental shock he released this time had been quite intense. Suddenly, Benny's gaze gathered on Fang Heng. Interesting. Fang Heng stood there calmly, his expression relaxed, as if the mental shock had not affected him at all. What an interesting kid. So he had high spirit attributes and a high degree of spiritual resistance. Curious to test Fang Heng's spiritual strength, Benny rubbed the black gemstone embedded atop his cane with his right hand, eyes fixed intently on Fang Heng. Whoosh! A more berserk mental shock converged and struck Fang Heng. Bang! It was as if an invisible barrier surrounded Fang Heng, directly bouncing off the focused mental shock. The intangible mental strength exploded in front of Fang Heng. Zaka, who stood right next to Fang Heng, was instantly affected by the residual wave of the expanding mental shock. His face turned pale, and he immediately fainted, needing to be supported out of the trial by 2 staff members. Fang Heng's expression still didn't change. He looked at Benny calmly. Interesting. Benny felt provoked and muttered under his breath. Rather than being angered, his eyes revealed a deeper interest. He slightly raised his cane off the ground and swung it rhythmically from side to side. Mental suggestion illusion. Fang Heng stared at Benny, his consciousness slowly drawn toward the cane, a trace of confusion flashing through his eyes. Whoosh! A rapidly spinning magic array was instantly reflected in Fang Heng's right pupil. The illusion in front of his eyes shattered in an instant. So, it was a talent ability. Not bad at all. Benny praised while ceasing the mental shock skill. He raised his head and looked at the 5 people still standing in the arena. Congratulations on passing the initial shadow step assessment. Now, follow me to begin the second-tier formal ritual training. The others will undergo conventional training arranged by the teaching team and will proceed to the next stage when their foundational strength is sufficient. With that, Benny turned and began walking away. After 2 steps, he suddenly remembered something and nodded toward the unconscious Zaka. Almost forgot. Bring that guy too. He's coming with us. Zaka was very confused. All he remembered was being hit by a wave of mental shock from Fang Heng during the trial, and then he blacked out. When he woke up again, his outer garments had been removed, and his body was covered with layers of black markings. Trial participant, please don't move. Okay. Zaka raised his head and saw that Fang Heng and the others were around him, letting staff members draw patterns on them using a black, unknown potion. Fortunately, the potion didn't have an unbearable smell. Instead, it gave off a faint jasmine fragrance. Benny stood nearby, leaning on his cane, watching them critically. The process of unlocking the seal is complicated. Just follow my instructions and don't waste time asking why. These are classified Federation secrets, and I can't disclose them. Fang Heng observed the runes being drawn on everyone and frowned slightly. Strange,